TLN, I/my/me of this chapter is in or unless specified otherwise. It was the day after the battle against Pollux, who had been manipulated by the G.O.Dis, ended. We had rented the innsmost S.P.A.Sias room and almost everyone was gathered there. The 12 stars and I were a given, the young boy SEI, Tara, Luna, and even Bennett Nash were also here. However, as you would have understood from the moment I said almost everyone, not everyone was here. First of all, Leon. He left after the battle ended. He had said that he had no intentions of getting along, but really, it was just like him to act in that way. And there was one other person. Dina, who had disappeared right before Pollux's raid, was also not here. At the time, I had simply thought that she was having an awfully long toilet break and nothing more. Notwithstanding, she did not show herself even after the battle had ended and, needless to say, she was also not in the bathroom. Her whereabouts had become completely unknown. Therefore, at this moment in time, with the exception of Leon and Dina, everyone was gathered in this place. And one more thing. Although it was a very joyful miscalculation, once the skill Alcade was deactivated, compared to the activated state, my, own thoughts and consciousness returned. As I had predicted, that skill called and woke the real Rupas up. Although I might get stronger, that skill's trade-off was quite detrimental and self-destructive to me. Overuse is no good, was what I would have wanted to say, however, it was a skill I would no doubt have to use when it was time to face the Demon King. In that case, you guys no longer have any intention of fighting against the humanoids anymore. That's right. Now that we know the true nature of what the demon race is, I don't intend to predict .I.P.8 in a rigged compet.I.shin that I know I'll end up losing. The one who answered my question was the Demon King's son, Tara. On another note, this B.A.S.T.A.R.D, he's so handsome to the point that it's irritating. Even compared to the actual hero, the young boy SEI, he had such a good-looking face that it was as if he had "I'm the protagonist" written all over his face. It was as if he was completely overshadowing and eating up SEI's presence. Even the young boy SEI was muttering, wouldn't it be fine if this person just became the hero, and seemed to have lost some self-confidence. If we asked a completely irrelevant third party who did not know anything to choose who they thought was the protagonist after being told that our battle was a part of a fantasy game, they would most likely choose this guy. His face was just that N.O.bly and good-looking. Explode and die. You say that, but isn't it actually just because you're scared of Rupas-sama? Agakeros flamed Tara in a provocative way. If I recalled correctly, previously, Agakeros took a loss against Tara at Blutgong. Either way, Agakeros's action was a little childish. That may be the case. It's quite a miserable thing, but if it's me, I wouldn't be able to win against her. On the other hand, Tara easily admitted the possibility and did not show any sign of being caught up in the provocation. Oh, he's such an adult. He's handsome looking on top of being calm and collected like a good adult. What is with this guy? You make us look like a band of bad guys in comparison, so you can show off a bit more of your shortcomings, you know? We actually are the bad guys. Rupas-dano. Even though there's someone from the demon race in front of your eyes, are you not going to kill them? If it was the me of the past, I would have killed them without a second thought, but the current me is not so cold-hearted as to attack an enemy who has already surrendered. If you really want it to be done, you can do so yourself. No, that, The elf Nii-san was shouting something, but I swiftly brushed it aside. Having said that, it was not like I was going to prevent the humanoids from defeating these demons. After all, looking at the current situation from their shoes, the ones in front of me were from the demon race, not to mention one of them was the prince himself, thus it might not have been easy for them to be forgiving. That was why I would neither affirm nor deny the way they thought of things. If they really wanted to defeat them, then they could fight with each other themselves. Yet the elf Nii-san did not say anything else and quieted down. Well, he must have been hoping that I would say something like, the demons should be killed, just as I did 200 years ago. Or rather, because I now hold someone else's point of view, I can say this, but the me of the olden days was just too cold-hearted. Or it could also be said that I gave no allowances. I possessed the power to destroy the world, was merciless and not to mention cold-hearted, so let me say this clearly. It was only natural for me to have been betrayed, and only natural to have been abandoned. The problem is, that I'm definitely closing in on that point. Libra, have you managed to locate Dina? No, I can't find her at all, even though I've been searching for her since yesterday night. It is very possible that she is no longer in this city. I see. Even using Libra's detection ability, we were still unable to ascertain Dina's whereabouts. As Dina was able to run away to any location using X-Gate, it would be easy for her to escape out of Libra's detectable area. Due to the natural progression of deduction, the question of why she ran away at this timing came up, and I suspected that answer had something to do with Pollux. Perhaps Pollux possessed something, some sort of information that was detrimental to Dina. That was why Dina ran away. If I thought in that way, everything would be resolved. Then, let's talk about Dina first. After all, fortunately for us, there's someone who knows about Venus in this place, Dina, you say. In response to my words, Pollux tilted her head. From the looks of it, she had not heard of the name before. When Pollux responded in this way, Libra took out a piece of paper and started drawing at a rapid speed. And what was created in the end was a drawing of Dina's face, elaborate enough for a person to mistake it for a black and white photograph. You could do something like that? Pollux received the piece of paper and looked at it seriously. And she started cold sweating quite heavily. Rupa-sama. This person was around you until recently. That's right. She named herself as the advisor that had been with us since 200 years ago. Though, honestly, we already knew that was a white lie. What were you thinking? She's the G.O.Dis's avatar, you know? Other than the fact that she's wearing different clothing, isn't her outer appearance completely the same as the actual Alovina-sama? What did you say? Or more like, the person who sealed you, Rupa-sama, is none other than her. I personally saw her help out Alioth and the rest in the battle 200 years ago by using the SUBSP.A.CE seal technique. What did you say? Or rather, I didn't expect that at all. Honestly speaking, I was fairly sure that Dina was the G.O.Dis's avatar, but to think that, let alone help out, she was the very person who sealed me. I see now, no wonder Dina ran away. The moment that woman, B.I.T.C.H, felt that Pollux was closing in on us, she ran away at full speed. Even A.S. Summing that she had a thin presence, I could say that it was too careless of me too, or more like, why did you even appoint a person like that to be an advisor? If you knew that it was a lie, you should have dismissed her. Well, no, I thought I'd let her play for a bit. Are you stupid? You're stupid, right? You only let a person play around if the other party doesn't notice that you've already figured out their lie. If they know you've already figured it out, then it's meaningless. Libra, you too. Why is that even though you're with her, you allowed such a dumb thing to take place? I'm in such a deep state of apology that I'm high above the mountains. You're not repenting, are you? Let alone being deep in apology, you're climbing high above the clouds. Soon, I'll leave out of the atmosphere. You piece of metallic Traz.H. Plus in front of Pollux's very scary and angry look, I was in such a deeply emotional state that I did not even know what to say. Pollux Dina Libra Rupa's Pollux has common sense. Ilu.S. Tration from Alba light novel. Oh, she's a very decent individual. Nothing like the decent, lol, people that we had until now. She's someone with actual common sense and a normal way of thinking. This is it, the thing that the 12 stars were lacking. Such a well-executed retort, Tsukumai, just then. She must be the one that I was searching for. Rupa-sama, if you have some time afterwards, can you let me know of everything that has transpired up until this point from the time of your resurrection to the extent that you can remember? Knowing you, Rupa-sama, you've probably, no, actually, you've definitely overlooked some things. Here. Pollux took out a piece of paper from her pocket and started noting things down. I used my peripheral vision and lightly peeked at what she was writing, but from the looks of it, she was organizing all of the information that she had gained from the conversations that we had up until this point. What a competent person she was, this Pollux. Seriously. Even though I know Rupa-sama has always been a muscle brain, it still makes my head hurt. You guys too. Instead of affirming and enabling everything that Rupa-sama does, give her some proper advice. Why exactly do you think the 12 stars exist? Of course, to use my whole body and everything that I have to fulfill all of the wishes Master has. Silence, goat. The duty of the 12 stars is to make up for the areas that Rupa-sama lacks in. Rupa-sama might possess an overwhelming amount of power, but she's not omnipotent. That's why, to cover for the things that she can't do, all sorts of idiosyncratic individuals were gathered and formed into the tyrannical 12 heavenly stars so that they could serve as her own limbs. In particular, when it came to her actions, ever since the past, Rupa-sama has always been a hot-blooded muscle brain who just charges straight in without thinking. So someone at her side has to act as her brain, but of all things, to think that she had infiltrated into that very position of the brain. Pollux spoke in a very irritated-sounding way, then started to look at the 12 stars in a reproachful manner. Meanwhile, I was made aware of quite an important new fact and was feeling quite surprised by it. I see, so it wasn't just me that was a hot-headed muscle brain, but also Rupa's. On the other hand, the 12 stars who were made to suffer Pollux's reproachful looks responded without feeling ashamed. But I'm not that smart. Me too. There's no way this mistress would object to what Rupa-sama does, would I? Me is also not good at thinking about things. Well yeah, I'm also not in charge of having to intelligently think through things, so I'm also not good at those kinds of things. After hearing Aries, Agacaros, Scorpius, Carcinos, Castor, and Sagittarius answer, Pollux held her head in anguish and muttered, "All these muscle brains." When she did, this time, Virgo shriveled up in a pitiful state. Seeing that, Pollux became fluid teared and quickly followed up with, "Oh, it's not your fault, okay." Pollux really was the type to worry, I see. Following this, Pollux proceeded to stare down Libra, but Libra turned her head 180 degrees and avoided her stare. Libra. The only one who could have acted as the counselor while I was away was you, isn't that right? Why did you let Rupa-sama go astray? An issue has occurred in my hearing system. I am unable to hear what you are saying. What a convenient system you have right there, huh? You piece of metallic trash maid. Pollux signed out loud like she had gotten past the point of exasperation, then turned towards me to stare me down. Rupa-sama. Why, yes. Now that I'm back, from now on, I'm going to be managing your actions. So when you plan to do something, you must first discuss it with me. Do I make myself clear? No, but do I make myself clear? Yes. In terms of simple fighting prowess, Pollux had nothing on me. Yet, for some reason, I was unable to raise my head in front of her. In all likelihood, even 200 years ago, I was scolded by her for countless things and she was the one holding the reins. Ah. So this is a true advisor, huh? Now that I had a feel for it, I understood how much Dina had been slacking in her role as an advisor. Having said that, this is actually a point that we should reflect back on a bit, of all things, to think that she was the very person who sealed Rupa-sama. This mistress didn't even notice that and was playing cards together with her, I didn't notice it and was discussing the proper way to make black tea with her. You guys are just too carefree. Scorpius and Agacaros's fists were shaking as their anger flared up. Nonetheless, the contents of what they were saying were actually quite stupid. The other 12 stars were also in similar conditions and each showed some kind of complicated facial expression. As for Aries and Virgo, from their expressions, rather than anger, it seemed that their sadness from being deceived was stronger. On the other hand, Libra was showing an expression as if to say she had predicted this from the very beginning. Now that I recalled correctly, the one who had doubted Dina the most was Libra. In that case, if we can catch and get the information out of her, we will be able to close in on the G.O.Dis in one go. We weren't acquainted with each other for that long, but she didn't seem like that bad of a girl to me. Be vigilant, older brother. Women are monsters. They can easily put up all sorts of fake outer appearances. Against Castor, Pollux presented him with the reality of the world. Yeah, she might be right. Women are really scary. Although, in terms of what they are, Scorpius and the like are actually monsters. Humph. It's you after all. You probably left her alone whilst saying, I don't know what she's thinking, so it might be interesting to leave her as a subordinate, isn't that right? You being soft on the people you're acquainted with is the same as before, I see, Moffle. Gyo. Being stabbed right where it hurt with what really did happen by Bennett, I was almost taken aback. Yeah, you're right on point, damn it. An advisor who may be hiding some secrets, I think that's interesting on its own. In a way, to have someone dangerous as a subordinate is an exciting scenario. That's the carefree remark I made after that one battle against Dina. What foolishness for, but yeah, for some reason, I can't think of her as an enemy, however hard I try. In any event, largely speaking, there are 4 main things that we need to do from now on. First of all, we have to find the 2 remaining 12 stars, Aquarius and Pisces. Then, we have to track down Dina who has disappeared. And lastly, we have to search for a way to transmigrate the demon race into a fairy race, It seems like there's a need to split into 4 groups. Yeah. Normally, splitting apart the military strength was a bad move. But yeah, well, there's probably no issues whatsoever. Honestly speaking, this lineup is too good. It has an overabundance of fighting prowess. The Blackwing Supreme Ruler, me, the Vampire Princess, Bennett, the Prince of the Demon Race and his close aide, the majority of the 12 stars, and as a bonus, the hero and his party. Thinking about it, what is with this chaotic party? Honestly, with something like this, we could have taken over the world in a single day. And, as a side note, if the goal wasn't domination but destruction, it'd be done in an instant. So scary. Of course, I will be joining the group which will search for a method of transmigration. After all, if I'm not there, nothing would even begin to get done. Besides, there's something that I'm curious about. Allow Luna and I to join in on that too. If Pollux is going, then I'll also tag along with that group. Then me too. I mean, I'm not really useful as a fighting potential, so. The first detachment group to be decided were the fairy siblings, Virgo, and the demonic pair of Terra and Luna. I supposed, considering their end goal, it was only natural. Furthermore, rather than sending Virgo to a dangerous location, if we could send her with the fairy siblings and have her on standby together with them, it would make us feel more relieved. Therefore, there was no problem with this. If I recall correctly, Aquarius is in the scorching region of Muspelheim, right? In that case, the members who are resistant to fire would be optimal to send there. Okay, Aries and Scorpius, you guys go. In the 1 in a million chance that it turns into a battle, Karkinos, who's a good match with Aquarius, you go with them too. For Muspelheim to be named the scorching region, it must have been a place that was really hot. Although every one of us here was resistant to heat to some degree, if it continued for a prolonged period of time, we might end up suffering from something like hyperthermia 5. As such, sending individuals like Aries and Scorpius who had high resistance to fire was optimal. As for Karkinos, well, he would serve the role of countering Aquarius. If it was just the 2 individuals who possessed a fire attribute, then they would be an absolutely horrible matchup against Aquarius. That's so cruel. This mistress wants to travel together with Rapasama. Scorpion-sama. Liberae, you. As usual, Scorpius complained, but I decided to ignore it for now. Recently, I had been getting more and more used to dealing with her. Next was a search party for Pisces whose location was unknown, but I could address this by sending the 2 individuals who excelled in search and detection. To find Pisces, I am sending Libra and Sagittarius. As support, I will add Agacaros. I doubt it will lead to a battle, but just in case, make sure to stay vigilant. I have understood the mission, Master. I will make sure to bring back Eros. Be nice to him and call him Pisces. Well, anyway, that should be fine. With Libra and Sagittarius there, they should be able to find him. As for the hero and his party, please move according to your own discretion. I mean, you guys aren't really my subordinates. So it's fine for you to take the action you believe would be best. Why, yes. I purposefully did not specify the young boy SEI's actions. It was because I believed it would turn out better that way. How should I put this? He acted in a way that was out of the expectations. An idea like wanting to reconcile and come to amicable terms with me was a prime example of that. It was something that the other people probably would not even have come up with. I wanted to bank on his trickiness arising out of him being from another world and his ideas which were not bound by common sense. The last thing that remained was the matter about searching for Dina, but I deliberately wanted to go by myself. There shouldn't be any problem in terms of battle potential, and I actually want to sit down and talk to her properly. At least, that was what I was thinking, but... Oi, Moffel. Haven't you forgotten about me? You intend to come along? I mean, even if I stay behind in Mjolnir, it's boring. I feel like it'd be more interesting to tag along and observe your movements. From the looks of it, it seemed Bennett wanted to come along. Is this going to be all right? She's not going to start spontaneously attacking me, right? I don't particularly hate Bennett and, if anything, I actually respect her. But she's actually scary because I don't know when she's going to start attacking me. In any event, with this, splitting everyone up into teams was done. What was left was to figure out our modes of transportation so that we could go about reaching our respective destinations. If I were to remodel Tanaka and Suzuki, it would be enough for 2 teams. After including the hero's party, I wanted transportation for at least 2 more teams. In the worst-case scenario, Bennett and I could just fly to our location ourselves. Although, in Bennett's case, it's jumping rather than flying. What's left is the means to get to our destinations, In regard to that, please leave it to me, Rappa-sama. Whilst I was thinking that I might create another golem, Castor confidently interjected himself, causing my thought process to be cut off. It seemed he was in possession of some ride that could fly in the sky. Castor matched his sight with that of Pollux's and she nodded lightly in return. Let's do it, Pollux. All right, older brother. Collaboration skill, flags.h.I+p of the heroic spirits. 7 Castor and Pollux held each other's hand and held them up into the air. When they did, light overflowed from their hands and rose high up into the air, slipping past the ceiling. The light did not seem to possess any destructive power as the ceiling which it had passed through did not break. Following a brief period of time after this, light gathered in the sky above and an enormous flying S.H.I+P materialized in the air. The people of the city were gazing up into the sky, wondering what was going on after they witnessed the irrational scene of a flying S.H.I+P appearing out of nowhere. This is amazing. In RPG games, it was a popular staple trope for a flying S.H.I+P that could travel across the world map to appear near the end of the game. To think that they could actually make such a thing happen, I was stumped for words. Author note, Ruppas's faction has been strengthened quite significantly. Bennett Nash became an ally now in an alliance relations.H.I+P with Mjolnir. Pollux became an ally finally, an intelligent character has become an ally. A few hundred high-level Argonauti heroes who were the subordinates of Ruppas in the past have now become allies, unlimited lives. Many tens of thousands of mob warrior Argonauti heroes who were the subordinates of Ruppas in the past have now become allies, unlimited lives. Dina ceased to become an ally item for moving across the world map. Argo has been acquired. From now on, we will be playing cheerful background music whilst we roam around the world map trying to look for hidden dungeons. Truly just like an RPG. Additionally, it looks like clearing the dungeon would not even take 10 minutes. Due to Pollux and Castor reuniting with each other, we have reached a state where Argonauti can be properly controlled. With this, there will no longer be a situation where they mistakenly kill each other or drag each other down. Due to the introduction of Pollux, we can now have the Argonauti spirits look after the seals of the Ouroboros in place of the 12 stars. This means it is now possible to retrieve the remaining 12 stars. In other words, it is now possible to retrieve Taurus, Aquarius, and Parthenos 8 kings of every kingdom, the Demon King, the G.O.Dis, author note end, __1 subsp.a.ce seal technique. 2. The word woman is used with b.i.t.c.h superscript on top. 3. Wait, I thought Libra has no facial expression, lol. 4. Original quote from chapter 40. 5. Hyperthermia and hypothermia are states at which the human body is at a temperature that it should not be. Hypothermia is diagnosed to have occurred when the body temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius, 95.0 degrees Fahrenheit, and hyperthermia is diagnosed to have occurred if your body temperature PAS.SES 37.5 or 38.3 degrees Celsius, 99.5 or 100.9 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the reference used. Note that once your body temperature goes over 40.0 or 41.0 degrees Celsius, 104.0 or 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit, it is called hyperpyrexia. If there are any doctors around and I'm wrong, please let me know since my source is Wikipedia, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/hyperthermia. 6. Both were tobio, so to fly. But the kanji used is different. One is literally to fly, whereas the other is to air, leap/hop/scent flying/shot flying, etc. You get the idea. 7. Collaboration skill, flags.h.i+p of the heroic spirits. 8. What? Why didn't you do that from the beginning? Also, now that we know Pollux is actually super smart, the inconsistency of her being defeated by Terra and Luna is even bigger. As a side note, I think the author intended the readers to think that Pollux intentionally let those two win. However, the intended effect is not very apparent. Personally, I think Pollux was brought down too much when she was cornered by Luna. Chapter 136, Rupa's used Ember 1 raw link, November 27, 2016, translator, Tumorfreethoughts/TPSTT, January 1, 2020, editor 1, Hand of Vecna, January 7, 2020, editor 2, Key, January 11, 2020, translation link, _________ the flags.h.i+p of the heroic spirits, Argo. It was an enormous S.H.I+p which flew in the sky with a length of 350 m and width of 52 m. It could only be manifested when both Castor and Pollux were together, and it used mana as fuel to move around. The wooden material which had been used to build the Argo was a single branch taken from the fairy siblings' real body. Perhaps due to that, the flags.h.i+p possessed high self-regenerative abilities, thus even if it were to be shot down by the enemy, it possessed the cheat-like feature of being able to make a comeback after a few days. This time, the ones who would be piloting the S.H.I+p were the heroic spirits called forth by Pollux, therefore we did not have to do anything in particular. The one who would be serving as our navigator was Pixis of the Compa.S.S Constellation 3. The single-eyed bandana-wearing man boasted that he knew everything there was to know about the skies of Midgard. The heroic spirit who named herself as our chief engineer was Suhail of the Vela constellation, a female pirate who wore a white overcoat although her countenance was not bad, due to her trained steel-like thick and muscular arms and legs and extremely split abdominal muscles, she did not come across as feminine to others. There was also a pack of 3 dwarves, Naos, Turace, and Asmidisk of the Puppies constellation, who would apparently be serving as our engineers, but I couldn't distinguish them apart from each other. 5. This was why I had previously said they should at least dye their beards. Our helmsman, Avier of the Carina constellation, was a man who did not look like a human no matter how I looked at him. 6. Or rather, he was an undead monster known as a dragon skeleton. I wondered if there was not a better helmsman. Besides them, a wide diversity of Argonauti were A.S. signed a range of different roles and would be supporting us in our subsequent journey. For some reason, there were also 2 heroic spirits wearing black robes which flew away from our location. Nevertheless, as the one who summoned them was Pollux, I doubted she would have summoned someone suspicious. The flags.h.i+p could reach a speed as high as Mach 5 and, if given 6.5 hours, it was said to be able to take a lap around Midgard 7, but because the appearance of how fast the S.H.I+P seemed to be going and its actual speed did not match up however I thought about it, I could only say it truly felt like a fantasy. Although it was irrelevant information, I wondered what was up with the crew members, as some of them were staring intently at Ares. Oh, if that's what you're wondering about, it's because, in the past, we traveled around the world on the Argo in search of a rainbow sheep. But in the end, we weren't able to find it. That explanation was given by Castor. Due to the fact that he was the captain of the Argo, the pirate captain cosplay that he had been wearing now appeared to be truly fitting. So that appearance wasn't just for show. That's the first time I've heard about this. I mean, it's a story from a few thousand years ago. A few thousand years ago, huh? I suppose if that was the case, there wouldn't have been a reason for him to tell us. The rainbow sheep at the time wouldn't have been Ares and I wasn't even born back then. Oh well, it doesn't really matter anyway. If anyone looks at Ares in a weird way, I'll use my discretion to throw them off the S.H.I+P. Of course, I understand. When I said that as a joke, Castor replied with a bitter smile. At the same time, every crew member who was looking at Ares hastily went back to their respective jobs in a fluid U.S.-tiered manner. Now then, let's have a journey in the sky. We might have done something bad to the citizens of Lajarn. They must have been the ones who were the most surprised about the Argo materializing. First, we dropped Pollux, Castor, Terra, and Luna off at Alfheim. As a bonus, I also dropped the heroes party off there. Additionally, as a mode of transportation from now on, I decided to lend them Suzuki once again. The next location the Argo headed to after Alfheim was an unexplored land that we had not stepped foot onto until this point. In other words, it was outside of the humanoids' domain. We had already determined that Aquarius was residing in Muspelheim, thus we decided to drop off Ares's group here. Furthermore, as a way for Ares's group to return to us, we left Tanaka with them. As we had previously arranged, a few heroic spirits who would take care of the Ouroboros' seal in Aquarius's stead were also dropped off. It was decided that the two individuals who would fill in Aquarius's shoes would be the water snake Hydrus and immortal bird Phoenix 8. Hydrus was a level 800 water dragon, which was a species of dragon. In his current humanoid form, he was a handsome B.A.S.T.A.R.D with blue hair which reached down to his knees. Phoenix was renowned to be the strongest of the bird-type monsters and was immortal. He possessed high regenerative ability, resistance to heat and aerial combat ability. Similar to Hydrus, he was a level 800 handsome B.A.S.T.A.R.D with a red ponytail. Although both of them were magical beasts that had been tamed by me, in actuality, I had not raised them at all from the moment I captured them. After all, those two were strong from the beginning. Oh, Rupa-sama. It makes me deeply emotional to be able to meet you like this once again in the realm of the living. It has been worthwhile waiting for you even after my death. I appreciate the miracle of this reunion. The two handsome individuals, who were sparkling needlessly due to the handsome character effect, took hold of my hands. Even their lines are superficially fine. Did they end up in the wrong world? If anything, these guys feel like the kind of handsome B.A.S.T.A.R.Ds that might show up in shoujo manga 9. I mean, they're even unnecessarily S.H.I plus New York and all. Or more like, were they dead all this time? I don't remember sending them out in that battle back in the game. So the immortal bird died. Yug. When you ask that question, I feel ashamed. I might be called an immortal bird, but it's not like I can't die. If I'm cut into finer pieces than my regeneration can manage, even I can't. If I considered that the immortal bird had died and turned into an Argonaut, it was amazing in a way. But the thing that I could not understand the most was the Karina, dragon skeleton. Since he was supposed to be a dragon skeleton, it would mean that he was dead from the very beginning. Yet what was with him dying and then turning into an Argonaut? Or rather, if he was going to resurrect at all, then he should at least properly resurrect with the same appearance as before he died. Why did he even remain as a skeleton? Rupa-sama, we'll soon be leaving the humanoids' domain. I predict that we may be attacked by demons. Please prepare for such an outcome. I acknowledged Libra's warnings and then looked outside of the S.H.I+P. When I did, I saw a bunch of demons Rus.H.I+NG towards the S.H.I+P and aiming for us. If it was against just those guys, now that we had a heavily concentrated amount of significant war potential, even if I did not do anything, Libra and the crew would be able to do something about it. But, since it was a good opportunity, I thought that it would be better for them to experience firsthand the resurrection of Rupa's Maffel. There's no problem. I will go. I cut in front of Libra and hopped out of the S.H.I+P before taking flight. By doing this, I was able to see the swarms and swarms and swarms of demons. This is pretty amazing. They're filling up the whole sky. In terms of numbers, there's so many that I can't count them all, but maybe there's over 100,000 of them? Either way, if you think normally, we're significantly outnumbered. If you think normally, that is. Hee. There are idiots that came out from the humanoids domain. Phew, it's a chick. Ain't she a good woman? I wanna do her. The demons, who were impressed by my appearance, started jeering and the likes, yet I simply pointed my index finger upwards. On top of my index finger, a small marble-sized ball of light was created, illuminating my face. Oh. Looks like she won a fight. What a brave lady she is. She probably doesn't realize our levels. Ignorance is so scary, isn't it? Alright, before we fight, I'll teach you despair, hopeless despair. Listen well and be amazed, for all of our levels are 250. Those 7 luminaries that you guys are desperately fighting against are, actually not that much stronger than us. In this dark continent, there are people with those kinds of abilities everywhere. You can't even say anything 'cause you're scared, right? Of course you are. After all, there are so many enemies with the same strength as the ones who are tormenting you guys. You must be so scared that you can't even squeak and you've leaked yourself, right? Yeah, they're raising flags. There's a lot of these guys in RPG games, aren't there? These kinds of enemies show up in the early or mid-game as enemy officers or commanders, and even though they're overwhelmingly stronger than other enemies, for some reason, in the late-game dungeons, they only show up playing the role of a small fry mob. When I was playing games, I wondered why they didn't go and become officers elsewhere. I was quite curious back then. At this point, when I took a quick glance at the S.H.I+P, perhaps after losing all interest in what was happening, Bennett was yawning with complete indifference. But it could not be helped. Although level 250 was indeed somewhat strong if you wanted to think of it that way, but from Bennett's and my point of view, they were nothing more than enemies which were lacking. Alright. Let's scare them with arcane magic first. Hee, aren't they gonna leak even more? Don't kill them, alright. We're going to enjoy them afterwards. The demon, which was at the very front of the pack, said something, and fired arcane magic in my direction. I looked on as the arcane magic was closing in on me, yet the corner of my mouth curled up. Well, I guess it'd be something like this, they're level 250, after all. It would have been fine if I received it directly, but that would mean my clothing would get a bit of dust on it. As such, I poured mana into the ball of light which was at my fingertip, expanding it in one go. The ball of light, which gigantified in an instant, swallowed up all of the arcane magic which was flying towards me, yet it still continued to expand in size. In front of the demons who were in a state of shock, it continued to expand until it turned into a miniature sun with a diameter of 50 meters before the expansion calmed down. In truth, I could make it even bigger, however, Midgard would turn into a scorched planet if I were to go too far. So I decided that this was enough. The demons, who were howling until just a moment ago, became petrified and their pupils became constricted to a point. Their nether regions were stained yellow and they were shaking vigorously. Well, they made a mistake in who they picked a fight with. I couldn't blame them for not knowing who I was since I had my wings hidden, wore GLA.S.SES and was under a disguise, but next time, they need to pay attention to who their enemy was. Subsequently, I moved my fingertip and lightly shot the solar flare which I had completed in the demon's direction. It was impossible for them to avoid it. It was because the miniature sun possessed a strong gravitational pull of its own. One after another, demons were sucked into the sun whilst their screams turned into a despair-filled chorus of agony which struck my eardrums. That instant, an explosion. A firework to commemorate the first step out of the humanoid's domain was shot and a resulting mushroom cloud ascended into the air. I had limited the area of effect quite significantly, but even then, it was still quite flashy. Well, I supposed the demons would have learned a lesson from this and would not carelessly pick a fight with others in the future. Due to the effect of Blunt Edge Strike, the demons still had 1 HP left. Those demons were now rolling on the ground in tears and rejoicing that they were still alive. I would be happy to just defeat them, but because there was that incident with Terra, I decided it would be fine to let them go just this once. If his dreamlike goal of transmigrating the demon race could be realized, then it was possible that we might not have to quarrel with the demons anymore. But if I were to exterminate the demon race before then, it would never even get to that point. So just this once. If it was just once, I was willing to let them go. At this moment, still have that much naivete left in me, even if just barely. As expected of you, Rappa-sama. That single attack of yours was as grand and magnificent as the sun, it was truly splendid. As I thought, the L.U.S.T.R.E. of a flame which burns all creation is the most supreme. Something like water is worthless. That was amazing, Rappa-sama. Truly a brilliant display of the use of sun attribute arcane magic. The Yakitori seems to be under some misunderstanding and thinks it's the same attribute as him, but the fire attribute can't even compare to this. I mean, fire is nothing but a degraded version of the sun, in the end. Tenha. NNN. When I returned, Hydrus and Phoenix were openly head-b.u.t.ting each other, however, somewhere in their words was toxicity towards each other's elemental attribute. Perhaps, they must have felt that toxicity directed towards them. The two of them threw away their S.H.I plus Ning character effects and suddenly seemed to resemble hoodlums with bloodshot eyes, staring each other down. NNN? What did you say, you little S.H.I plus T? Don't get C.O.C.Ky. You're just a water snake. Are you picking a fight with me, huh? Huh? You're just a Yakitori. Stop clucking and chirping already, eh? Do you want to get eaten, huh? NNN. Huh. The appearance of them taking hold of each other's collar and trying to mince the other party was just like what one would expect of small-time hooligans. V6 Ruppa's pick fight with Phoenix vs Hydrus. Illustration from Alba Light novel. They might look like pretty boys, but in the end, they're still magical beasts, huh? Their true nature is still fairly violent, after all. I ignored the two individuals who started punching each other without a cue and rested my back on an armrest. As I had been told the humanoid's right of existence was within the demon race's sphere of control, I stayed quite vigilant and thought it would be dangerous to enter their domain until I gained sufficient war potential, but it seemed I was thinking too much. Although it was possible that these demons were just the scouts and the probability of stronger guys being on standby was not zero, it seemed their threat level was far less significant than what I had predicted it would be. Having said that, with the way things were currently, even if stronger enemies were to show up, it would be no problem. I decided to let the Argonauti handle the enemies the next time. Aries-sama. You're also fire attribute, right? Let's beat him up together. Wah, that's dirty. Don't call others into your personal fight. Your fire's completely useless to me, but His Grace's fire is effective even if I reduce the damage by half. Because it's % damage. After Hydrus took a mounting position on top of Phoenix and punched him until he was bleeding from his nose, Phoenix sought assistance from Aries. Well, if it's fire vs water, it's no wonder it end up like that. Aries, who was called upon for help, was looking a bit fluid. But Scorpius lightly knocked on his head. You can ignore it, Aries. You can leave a bunch of idiots like that to their own devices. That's right, fights are supposed to be done one-on-one. Sagittarius, go and wear some pants. Although what Sagittarius said was spot on, because of the arrow dangling down from his crotch, everyone was exasperated. You Didn't I create pants for you? Why are you still naked? Fortunately, the Mosaic Sensors.H.I+P skill cast by Dina was still in effect, but it was still an unsightly scene. Bennett in particular looked at Sagittarius as if she was looking at some filth and was cracking her knuckles. I had been told that 200 years ago, Sagittarius almost never appeared in front of even his allies, and whenever he did show himself in front of people, he would be under some kind of a disguise. I originally thought it was due to him specialising in A.S.S.A.S.Cination, but unexpectedly, the real reason might have been because of his exhibitionism, which made it unsightly for him to appear before others. Therefore, it was likely that he might have been ordered by Ruppes to keep himself from appearing before others. Oi, Moffel. Can I kill that guy? If it's only halfway to death, I permit it. All right. Ruppes-sama. Sagittarius looked at me with pleading eyes, but I don't see it. Looking at Sagittarius, who was kicked out of the S.H.I+P and abandoned on his own, and Libra, who had fired a rocket punch to retrieve him back up, I smiled bitterly. What a rowdy bunch we were. But it seemed that we were sure to have a journey which would not be boring. Author note, Ruppes, # from today onwards, you're going to specialise in nothing but sniping from a long distance away. Also, in case you need to appear before people, make sure you wear your pants and disguise yourself. Sagittarius, W. Y. Ruppes, # because you're always dangling that around and it's unsightly. The truth of the matter that was made clear, which no one wanted to know about. The immortal bird phoenix, one of the magical beasts which was captured by Ruppes 200 years ago and swore loyalty to her. The strongest CLA.S.S of bird-type magical beast which rivals even the dragons. He possesses high regenerative ability, aerial maneuverability, and flame attacks, therefore, it is very strong. Furthermore, his blood itself possesses a strong healing effect and is a recovery item. Therefore, even as a material for alchemy, it is of the highest tier. If an individual possesses even a single feather of his, the holder will automatically regenerate a small amount of HP in intervals. Judging him based solely on his strength, it would not have been strange for him to be named as one of the tyrannical 12 stars. However, because Ruppes had captured him for the sake of alchemy, he was not raised at all. His special techniques are Leer and Fire Spin. 11 Honestly speaking, because he is someone which will be traded for Aquarius, he is a character you don't really need to remember. His HP is 65,000. He has the personality of collecting S.H.I plus New York things. The water snake Hydrus, one of the magical beasts which was captured by Ruppes 200 years ago and swore loyalty to her. A kind of dragon, which is known to be the strongest category of magical beasts. Its true appearance is that of a water dragon with a length of 80 m. It possesses a strong defensive ability and manipulation over water. Hydrus is a complete physical attack type. The destructive cannon howl attack that it releases from its mouth can turn a 1 km radius from the point of impact into ash. His defect is that he is unable to learn the majority of the water attribute skills because he ran out of memory 12. Due to that, he reached a sad point where he does not possess many powerful water type skills despite being a water dragon. Honestly speaking, because he is someone which will be traded for Aquarius, he is a character you don't really need to remember. Judging him based solely on strength, it would not have been strange for him to be named as one of the tyrannical 12 stars. However, when it came to the water attribute, because there was already Pisces and Aquarius, he drops down to the second tier. His HP is 67,000. Although he is a dragon of the sea, he possesses the ability to fly. Whilst he is water attribute, he has two more weakness, lightning as part of his unique PAS.Civ skill. Therefore, some would attribute arcane skills, lightning types, are insanely effective against him. 13 Amongst some of the magical beasts, on top of their base weakness, the G.O.Dis may specify additional unique weaknesses. He is one such individual. So please do not use Thunderbolt on him. 14 Honestly speaking, I'm sorry that they are essentially who __ of the wind and shu _ n of the flames. 15 Because the Argonauti have become allies, from now on, we won't be short on dogs that bite anymore. Convenient. 16 Author note end ___1 2350 metre equals 1148.3 feet equals 0.22 miles. 52 metre equals 170.6 feet. Since it didn't seem that enormous, I did a quick Google search, and according to Wikipedia, well, credibility/reliability aside, I got lazy LOL. The longest aircraft carrier has a length of 342 m, 1,122 feet, and the largest cruise S.H.I+P has a length of 361 m, 1,184 feet, so it's actually ma.s.civ. https://in.wikipedia.org/wiki/list_of_longest_naval_s.h.I+ps https://in.wikipedia.org/wiki/list_of_largest_cruise_s.h.I+ps 3. A small and faint constellation. Pyxis, also known as Pyxis Nautica, Latin for mariner's compa.s.s, is counted among the 88 modern constellations. Pyxis is located close to the stars that formed the old constellation of Argo Navis, the S.H.I+P of Jason and the Argonauts. Wikipedia, Pyxis of the compa.s.s, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Pyxis. 4. Vela is a constellation, and its name is Latin for the sails of S.H.I+P. It was originally part of a larger constellation, the S.H.I+P Argo Navis, but was later divided into 3 parts, the others being Carina, the keel and hull of the S.H.I+P, and Puppies, the P.O.O.P deck of the S.H.I+P. It ranks 32nd of the 88 modern constellations in size. Wikipedia, Vela, constellation, Vela, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/vela_left_constellation, hashtag. Suhail, Gamma Velorum, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/gamma_velorum. 5. Puppies is a constellation that represents the P.O.O.P deck of S.H.I+P. It was originally part of an overlarge constellation, the S.H.I+P of Jason and the Argonauts, Argo Navis, but was divided into 3 parts, the other 2 being Carina, the keel and hull, and Vela, the sails of the S.H.I+P. Puppies is the largest of the 3 constellations, and it is one of the 88 modern constellations. Puppies, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Puppies. Neos, Zeta Puppies, 2 Race, Rho Puppies, Asmodisk/Asmodisk, 11 Puppies, are stars within the Puppies constellation. Neos, Zeta Puppies, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Zeta_Puppies. 2 Race, Rho Puppies, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Rho_Puppies. Asmodisk/Asmodisk, 11 Puppies, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/11_Puppies. 6. Carina is a constellation, and its name is Latin for the hull or keep of S.H.I+P. It was part of the constellation of Argo Navis, the S.H.I+P Argo, until it was divided into 3 pieces, the other 2 being Puppies, the P.O.O.P deck, and Vela, the sails of the S.H.I+P. Carina, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Carina_left_constellation. Aviar, Epsilon Carini, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Epsilon_Carini. The J.A. Payne's name for the Carina constellation, literally means dragon bones. This new character, Aviar, is thus described as a dragon skeleton. 7 Mach 5 equals 6,174 km per hour or 3,836.35 miles/h. Based on this sentence, A.S. summing it is a complete lap. The circumference of Midgard is estimated to be around 4,131 km, or 24,936 miles. By comparison, the circumference of the Earth is calculated as 40,070 km, or 24,898 miles, by NASA, and 40,075 km 24,901 miles by another site, NASA, 40,070 km. s.p.data.ce.com, 40,075 km. For reference, The fastest plane Lockheed State Route 71 Blackbird clocked in at 3,529.6 km per hour or 2,193.2 miles per hour, approximate Mach 3. And a NASA S.P.A.CE shuttle is stated to travel at approximately 28,000 km/h or 17,500 miles per hour, approximate Mach 22.7. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Lockheed_SR71_Blackbird. 8 Water Snake Hydrus, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Hydrus. Immortal Bird Phoenix, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/phoenix_left_constellation. 9 Shoujo Manga is a manga aimed at a teenage female target demographic. Readers.h.I+p https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/sh%c5% 8jo_manga. Shoujo translates to young girl, so in this category, you would see series like Ouran High School Host Club, Kaiko wa Maid-sama, Vampire Knight, Card Captor Sakura, and Special A. Yeah, you get the idea. In the slightly exaggerated POV of Ruppas, this category typically has handsome men, a shallow story, cutesy girls, etc. 10 Yakitori, literally meaning grilled bird/chicken, is a popular food in J.A.Pan. In English, you can call it a skewered chicken. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/yakitori. Shutterstock_6830096992XL image from 11 Lear. Fire Spin. 12 In the Pokemon games, you can only learn 4 moves at any given time, even if that Pokemon can actually learn like 100 moves. I think the author's saying that Phoenix only has 2 skills, so it was no problem for him, but Hydrus has so many skills it could learn but can't learn because it's limited to 4. 13 Another Pokemon reference, water Pokemon take double damage when hit by electric type attacks. So I'm guessing it's X2 X2 X2. So he takes 8 times the damage of what he should take when hit by lightning type attacks. 14 Thunderbolt, 1-0. 15 Huey of the Wind, and Shuren of the Flames. 16 Air, wasn't sure what dog that bite was, but apparently, it's a famous quote from some literature, prob not some, but since I'm not familiar with J.A.Pain/CLA.S.Sick literature, I can only say some. I think it means a fodder character/guinea pig character that will first fight the enemy so the actual important characters/readers can get a feel for the enemy's strength. Chapter 137, Muspelheim was frozen. Raw link, November 28, 2016, translator, Tumorfreethoughts/TPSTT, January 4, 2020, editor 1, Hand of Vecna, January 11, 2020, editor 2, Key, January 16, 2020, translation link, ____________. It must have been approximately 3 hours since we had started flying over the Dark Continent. After being told, we can almost see Muspelheim, I went up onto the deck of the S.H.I+P. Looking around, I saw that many other people on our journey had also gathered already and that they were surprised by the state of Muspelheim which they saw in front of them. Muspelheim, one of the locations where an Ouroboros was sealed. It was said that Muspelheim was a place with a strange phenomenon where fire did not revert back to mana. Thereby it was said to be surrounded by flames which never disappeared. Its temperature was said to be around 1,000 degrees Celsius, thus it was an uninhabitable environment for living organisms. In one legend, it was discussed that it might have been the result of a sacred treasure's influence. Well, all of that was second-hand information provided by Libra. But, it seems hearsay really can't be relied upon. When I was supplied with the aforementioned explanation, I had pictured in my head that Muspelheim was a land enclosed by flames, but my predictions turned out to be significantly different from reality. Or more like, it's frozen. Yeah. It's frozen. Looking down onto the land below from the Argo, I saw a scene which was the complete opposite of what I had imagined it to be. Even though it was called a scorching land, of all things, it was actually an extremely cold land encased in ice. In the middle of all of this, there was a palace made out of ice. Furthermore, houses that were also built out of ice were lined up around the palace, making it look like a castle town. The ground was covered in snow, and just by looking at the place, one could feel chills running through their body. Looking at it from a distance, it looked mystical. However, it was a location which one would not have wanted to live personally. It's probably the work of Aquarius. It is my conjecture that, using its own mana, Aquarius must have overridden this land's climate. Is that so, Ho? The whole of Muspelheim? If it is her, it is not impossible. Out of curiosity, Libra, do you know what the surface area of Muspelheim is? It is 83,500 square kilometers. 283,500 km2, so, it approximately had the same surface area as the island of Hokkaido. 3. Considering the large surface area and the fact that it was originally a land where the average temperature was over 1,000 degrees Celsius, for her to freeze up the whole area, she must have possessed tremendous power. When it came to water attribute users, the first one that came to my mind was Dina, but notwithstanding that they both used the same element, the way they used it was substantially different. If anything, rather than water, this is more like an ice attribute. Though, since an ice attribute doesn't exist in this world, it'd be categorized as the water attribute. So, Rupa-sama, we'll get going now. Aries jumped onto the railings of the S.H.I+P first, followed by Scorpius, Karkinos, Phoenix, and Hydrus. They were going to directly jump down into the city. With their physical abilities, it was not particularly a problem, but I wondered if they would not feel cold looking like that. Ares's limbs were exposed to the environment, and one did not need to even mention Scorpius. Even Karkinos, who was wearing the most clothes out of the bunch, could not be said to be wearing winter clothing. Well, if it was them, there would not be any problems. But I decided to give them something just in case. Wait a moment. Going off looking like that is that, you know. So take these. Saying this, using X-Gate, I took out 3 sets of thick coats from Muffle Tower. It was defensive equipment called the Coat of Orgelmir that I had crafted in the past for times where I would have to battle against a water attribute boss for overall. It dropped the wearer's status a little, nevertheless, it was a piece of defensive equipment which was strong against water and fire attribute enemies, as it reduced the damage inflicted by those 2 elemental attributes by 70%. I digress, but my current overcoat reduced the damage I suffered from all attributes by 50%, therefore, taking into consideration only water and fire attributes, it was superior to my equipment. In terms of design, there were white, black, and red colors available, therefore it would be fine to give them their own individual colors. Scorpius did not look much different in the end though. And this is a farewell gift. As a bonus, I gave the 3 of them weapons that I had crafted to PAS.S the time. Originally, in X-Gate Online, perhaps in consideration of game balance, it was set so that magical beasts could not equip equipment, but that was not so in this world. Castor, Taurus, and Sagittarius had equipment and weapons as if it was the most common thing in the world. If you thought about the fact that they had 2 empty hands, then of course it was only natural that they would be able to carry equipment around. What I gave Ares was a pair of gloves with a holes cut where the fingers were, otherwise known as the so-called open finger glove. At the roots of both hands, in other words at the 3rd joint of each hand, there were 4 protrusions. When the hand was clenched into a fist and used to punch something, that part would be slammed into the enemy. The gloves increased the STR of the wearer by 1200 and came with the special effect of being able to penetrate the enemy's elemental defense. With it, even if the enemy was strong against the fire attribute, Ares would be able to deal % damage without any worries. What I gave Scorpius was a chain sickle of some sort 5 at a fundamental level. It was a chain sickle, however, the end of the weapon was not a sickle but a scorpion's pincer. When the weapon was swung at an enemy, the pincer would automatically pinch at and capture the enemy. The weapon simply increased the attack power of the user by 2000 and nothing more. Nevertheless, it was clear that it was a strong weapon just by looking at it. Although the chain sickle did not have any special abilities, because it had a long range, it was proportionately easy to use. The one who gave me the most to think about was Karkinos. If someone were to ask me what the problem was, it would be that he already had a weapon. That scissor blade that he always whipped out from who knows where was apparently a genuine weapon of his. 6 Scorpius's scissors were created from mana, but Carcanos's scissor was a weapon that he had made himself by shaving away at his own SHE.L.L. As such, for Carcanos, I decided to just upgrade the weapon which he already had. Originally, his weapon provided him with an increased attack power of 800. After the modification, his attack power would increase by 1000 and gain the effect of being able to attack twice. Furthermore, when thrown, the scissor would return back to the location of its owner like a boomerang, thus he was now technically able to use long-range attacks. But, yeah. Even if I provide them with weapons, it's a bit awkward. Unlike these three, the aforementioned individuals, Sagittarius, Castor, and Taurus, did not change much when they transformed into their magical beast forms. Castor in particular was already in his base appearance, and even when Sagittarius reverted back to his true appearance, only his lower body changed. Taurus would probably only grow bigger. However, when Aries, Scorpius and Carcanos became serious, the three of them would revert back to their enormous magical beast forms. When that happened, the weapons provided by me would naturally become unusable. Thinking in that way, perhaps they just had an innate compatibility problem with equipment. Well, it's probably still better than nothing. Probably. Rupa-sama gave me a piece of equipment. I'll cherish it for my whole life. I'll store it carefully and turn it into a family heirloom and marvel at it for generations. No, don't store it. Use it. What do you think the equipment is even for? In any event, I managed to increase their base stats. Even if something were to happen, as long as it was not something extraordinary, they should be able to deal with it somehow. Because of the lack of time, I had not finished crafting equipment for the other members, but I planned to make them some in due time. Thank you very much, Rupa-sama. I'll leave Aquarius to you guys. Understood. I lightly patted Aries' head and sent them out. What happened from now on depended on them. Needless to say, I believed in them. If it was the three of them, they would be able to bring Aquarius back without fail. After hearing my words, Aries seemed to have become energized and, this time for sure, jumped off the Argo. Following him, Carcanos, Phoenix and Hydrus also jumped down. Currently, the Argo was at an altitude of 10,000 meters, but if it was Aries and the rest, it was not a height at which there would be any problem. Something like a parachute was also unnecessary. Watching their figures as they left, I noticed that Scorpius had yet to jump off. Looking at the face of Scorpius, who seemed to be expecting something, I also gave her a head pat. When I did, Scorpius's enthusiasm immediately shot up and she jumped off whilst screaming, "Hi-ay-ay-ay-ay." Today, she was operating normally as usual. Aries and the rest, who descended from the height of 10,000 meters, landed in a position which was slightly away from the city. Right before he landed, Aries brought out his flames whilst Scorpius and Carcanos both kicked towards the ground and used the resulting shockwave to soften the landing impact. There was not much to say about Phoenix and Hydrus, who could both fly in the first place. They landed in a place slightly behind Aries and the other two so that they would not get ahead of them. Like this, the five of them who landed in the extremely cold region of Muspelheim were made to experience once again how different the place was from the Muspelheim that they remembered in their memories. No matter how much I look at it again from this close-up, it really doesn't feel like Muspelheim. With the way things are, it's more like the North Pole. You can say that again. It used to be such a nice place with nice heating, what a waste. Indeed. I don't mean to blame Aquarius-sama, but honestly, seeing Muspelheim, which is supposed to be a paradise of flames, be frozen over this magnificently, I feel a little conflicted. For the three fire attribute individuals, Aries, Scorpius, and Phoenix, the original Muspelheim was the location where they felt most comfortable in. And in reality, even Rupas decided on the current members after taking into consideration Muspelheim's extreme heat. Therefore, it could be said that the current situation was out of the calculation. Nonetheless, if one were to ask whether they could change members at this point or not, the answer was no. Even if they were to include Agacaros into this group, there was no member that they could take out. If Aries was to be removed, it would mean that there would be a double troublemaker combination of Agacaros and Scorpius left. If Scorpius was to be removed, it would mean that Scorpius and Libra would be in the same group, thus there would be infighting in that group. However, Karkinos absolutely could not be removed because he was there to be the countermeasure against Aquarius in case the 1 in a million chance they entered into a battle with her. In other words, although the situation was different from what they had originally planned for, the current personnel could not be swapped out. For now, let's enter the city. First, we need to try and understand what kind of city this is. It's just as Karkinos-sama says. There's nothing that we can achieve even if we remain here. Karkinos suggested that they enter the city and Hydrus responded in agreement. Practically speaking, what he was saying was right on point. Even if they continued to stand around, the situation would not change. The others did not have any objections to this suggestion and silently nodded in agreement. Step by step, they left their footprints behind in the snow and then stepped foot into the city. When they did, what filled their vision was a world of silver. All of the buildings, which were lined up, were made out of ice and snow and took the shape of hemispheres. The houses were adorned with their own decorations and were all lined up fantastically. Even the trees that decorated the side of the road were all made out of ice, making them wonder how such a thing was possible. The various pieces of ice which were shaped like trees protruded out of the ground in a straight line. From them, snow blossomed out of the ice as if they were leaves. Phoenix casually snapped a branch off of one of the trees and observed it by rubbing and scr.a.ping it with his fingertip. At the very end, he heated up his palm and tried to see how it would react, but only ended up narrowing his eyes. It's a strange type of ice, it doesn't melt even when heated up. Are all of the buildings which constitute this city also made out of the same kind of ice? How beautiful! Rather than ice, you could call them crystals at this point. Is this a city of crystals? In contrast to Phoenix, who was making a conflicted face, Hydrus was absent-mindedly looking around the silvery city. The glister of this silver world, what a beautiful thing it is. Hydrus was inappropriately wondering in his heart whether this whole city was one big piece of art or not. Stop getting mesmerized, octopus. What city of crystals? You're so sn.o.bby. You're noisy, Yakitori. Looking at this city and not feeling anything, aren't your senses rotten, huh? Huh. Huh. Ignoring Phoenix and Hydrus, who became inharmonious and grabbed each other's collars, Ares and the rest proceeded to move forward. As those two were always like that with each other even 200 years ago, this was just their normal state, thus it was not something they had to pay attention to this late in time. Although they seemed like they had a bad relations. H.I+P, those two could be called comrades in arms with each other and were actually good buddies. As such, even if they were to slam a cross-counter on each other's face, there was nothing the others had to worry about. If left alone, they would catch up with Ares and the rest inside of the city eventually. So, what do we do first? I guess the first place to visit to gather information is always the tavern. Let's look for a building that looks like that first. If one wanted to gather information, then they needed to go to a place where a lot of people gathered. That was a conclusion anyone who had any sort of experience of being an adventurer would immediately be able to reach. In the past, there was a period of time where Rupaz herself had gathered information at taverns. Karkinos himself had also opened taverns with the purpose of gathering information. Where people gathered, information would consolidate. Even if it was just a small rumor, there was a high possibility that the shopkeeper or the regulars might have heard about it before. That's so troublesome. It'll be the end of it all if we just head straight to the palace and pick Aquarius up. It's not like we're not acquainted with each other. That's true. Is there some reason we shouldn't just go ahead and do that? That's what we're going to find out. Just what exactly is this city like? Why did Aquarius make a city like this when she should have been sealing the Ouroboros? Without knowing those things, if we just charge right in, it could cause unnecessary trouble. Aren't you prudent? After all, this is a mission in which failure cannot be permitted. Even Scorpius, who was looking hot.s.sled, could do nothing but agree with Karkinos's words of failure cannot be permitted and swallow her objections. Exactly, failure was absolutely not permitted. This was an order entrusted to them by their master. If they were to do something unnecessary and cause Aquarius to be weighed down such that she could no longer leave, they would not be able to show their faces in front of Rapaz anymore. Fine, fine. But we can't take up too much time. This mistress wants to quickly finish the job and get back to doing lewd things with Rapaz-sama. In that way, Scorpius ended up reluctantly approving Karkinos's suggestion. Interesting and useful but long author note. I will hereby explain the standard of level groups in this world. Without the effects of doping, I don't have much to write about right now, so I will go through the approximate reference points of each level group. Please note that this is not an absolute of each category, but along the lines of, well, they're probably this strong type of thing, so please keep that in mind. Level 1 to 3, an ordinary person. In terms of Earthlings, Level 1 is a child, Level 2 is an average adult man, and Level 3 has the strength of a professional sportsman. In other words, even if you bring a professional baseball player and such to this world, they would only possess abilities as strong as a Level 3 person. Level 4 to 10 people in this level range would be deemed sort of able to fight, even in Midgard. A newbie adventurer would fit in this range. As a side note, in terms of Earthlings, Level 4 would be at the level of a professional martial artist. The strongest amongst them might become a world champion, however, there would be barely any differences in terms of their status. An Earthling who could reach Level 5 would probably be the rarest of the rare. Level 11 to 15, they are enough to be considered a full-fledged adventurer. As long as they are not overly zealous, they would be able to sc.r.a.pe by and live stably. Even amongst the Knight's Order, they would be fine as a lowly squire. Level 16 to 30, they are at a sufficient level to call oneself full-fledged. As adventurers, they could call themselves top CLA.S.S. Even amongst the Knight's Order, they are sufficiently strong and, depending on the situation, may even be in the position to lead some subordinates. The lowest point at which a person may call themselves strong. From a holistic view, it can be called the lowest end of the top tier. Level 31 to 50, as an adventurer, they are first CLA.S.S. If anything, why are they still being an adventurer at this level? Well, yeah, they have that kind of strength. Jean's group Hawkeye fits in this category. In truth, they are actually really amazing. Even amongst the Knight's Order, they have the strength to be a commander. Once a person reaches level 50, it would not be strange for them to be promoted to a position in the Royal Guard. In practice, in some smaller kingdoms, warriors at this level are named as the strongest in a kingdom. Level 51 to 70, a charismatic strong individual that the whole continent would know about. Once an individual reaches this stage, when they are being addressed by others, they would no doubt be referred to with the strongest of in their T.I.Tles somewhere. In an often seen Adventurers Guild setting, they may be someone that is A.S. signed the CLA.S.S of S rank. Although, those categories don't exist in this world. Individually, they have enough strength to be able to go against a small platoon and, depending on the situation, against a mid-sized platoon. Level 71 to 99, they are insanely strong. It wouldn't be strange for them to be named the strongest of the humanoids. In practice, in a few different ages of civilizations, this was actually the strongest level range that the humanoids could reach. In normal RPG games, they would be characters at the level cap who could do amazing things. It would not be strange for them to be called legends. I made this category whilst keeping in mind the average medieval fantasy world RPG game strength at level 100. Level 100 to 200 individuals who have Serpa.S. said the limits of a human. A living legend. Although it would depend on the way they fight, it is not impossible for these people to destroy a country on their own. Their existence itself becomes a weapon. Level 201 to 300 alone, they can be a threat to a kingdom. A walking strategic level weapon. If they run, they would be able to move faster than the speed of sound. Their arcane magic would be able to burn down an entire forest. Their sword attacks would create fissures in the land itself. If these individuals were not in an insanely exaggerated world like this series, it would not be strange for them to serve the role of the last boss. With their strength, they would be able to fight against Earth's large army of battalions alone. But not against nuclear weapons. There's also an Earthling commando who can cause a third world war to erupt as if they were a one-man army. Is that person really human? Level 301 to 500, the category where an individual would exist beyond their time and be said down in myths and legends. Individually, they would be able to easily as a kingdom's military might and change even the weather. If these individuals were to get serious, they could even completely erase a small area of land. By now, they have transcended the limits of a living being. In all likelihood, they can fight against the entire J.A. Defense Force in a frontal A.S. assault on equal footing. Still A.S. summing no nuclear weapons. But if they're over level 400, there is a possibility that they can withstand nuclear strikes. Level 501 to 700, walking catastrophes. These people can no longer be thought of as living creatures. They can split seas, crack mountains, and change the very geographical structure of the planet. These people should be thought of as catastrophes that possess a will of their own. They are no longer existences that can be handled by means of common sense. By this stage, not even a small-scale nuclear weapon would be able to defeat them. Level 701 to 999, major catastrophes. Individually, they can destroy civilizations. Let alone that, they can even wipe out all living creatures on the planet. Truly monsters. By this stage, even if the Earth's strongest nuclear weapon directly hit them, they will not die. If a monster at this level decides to attack you with hostile intent, it is equivalent to a giant meteor falling on top of you. Level 1000, the pinnacle of strength. Individually, these people have the strength to turn a planet into a dead rock. They are no longer at a point where something could be done about them. One can only pray that these people don't decide to direct ill intention towards them. They are at the point where even after striking them with all the nuclear weapons the world has, they finally suffered some small damage stage. Originally, this is a stage that is almost impossible to reach without some form of intervention from the G.O.Dis's side. This is the realm only some great evils and heroes in Midgard's legends have managed to reach. Their existence itself is one form of deterrence. In a way, they are the world's system itself, and it was never intended for other living beings to struggle against it. The Lion San is extremely strong. Level 1000, limit break, doping, people that reached the level 1000 cap that you normally can't reach, then further increase their stats above and beyond that limit. A category of senseless people that make no sense. They can even fight on equal footing against the previous group of deterrent CLA.S.S magical beasts. The G.O.Dis, what is this? Level 1500, Alcade, level 1000, limit broken, individuals who limit broke even more, such that they have finally broken past the level cap restriction, the scenario. By now, the individual is just a bug in the system. Because they have broken past the level 1000 wall, their maximum damage ceiling has also been increased. Therefore, from this category onwards, the destruction tier gets a little out of hand. A bit more specifically, it is possible for them to deal more damage than a planet like Midgard would be able to bear and shatter it. Furthermore, damage limits go up by 1 digit for every 1000 level threshold that they break past. At this stage, they can fight at half the speed of light. From a single jump, they can reach S.P.A.ce and with a single kick shatter a planet. Even a mere shockwave of full-strength arcane magic will shatter countless planets and can even cause cosmic-scale explosions. The G.O.Dis equals the G.O.Dis in a state of confusion after the situation has Serpa.S. said her understanding. It seems she honestly doesn't know how such a weird thing ended up happening. Level 3000, the stage where nothing makes sense anymore. If they feel like it, they can probably destroy a solar system at the very least. Half A.S. said statement, the G.O.Dis, that's right. This is a dream, runs away from reality. Level 4200, look, G.O.Dis. This is despair. The G.O.Dis, author note end. Chapter 138, Ares used flamethrower, 1 raw link, December 3, 2016, translator, Tumorfreethoughts/TPSTT, January 7, 2020, Editor 1, Hand of Vecna, January 15, 2020, Editor 2, Key, January 20th, 2020, Translation link, _______, Author note, skipped irrelevant to English readers. Author note end, _____. After entering a tavern, what Ares and the rest saw was a sight that should not have existed in the Dark Continent, a lively bunch of humanoids. They included, but were not limited to, humans, beastkin, elves, flugels, dwarves and hobbits. The very fact that humanoids were actually living here was astonis.h.I+ng. Ever since the 7 heroes had lost against the Demon King, the humanoids had had their right to exist slowly taken away. By now, they were only left with a small area of land. Specifically, they could only live in the small area of land where Ares and the rest had been operating in up to this point. Yet, to think that there were some living normally in Muspelheim, which boasted the greatest level of danger even within the Dark Continent. Inside the shop, enveloped by perpetual ice, people were sitting down whilst wearing heavy clothing in order to keep warm and drinking alcoholic beverages while having friendly conversations. At the very least, it did not seem like they were living in fear of tomorrow, because the tavern was not shrouded in a dark atmosphere. This is kind of a given, but it doesn't seem like the furniture themselves are made out of ice, huh? Scorpius touched a random table and muttered in a disinterested voice. Even taking into consideration that they wouldn't disappear, as expected, the tables and chairs could not have been made out of ice. Having said that, the surroundings were how they were. It did not change the fact that it was still cold. However, taking into consideration how the whole place was enclosed by ice, this tavern could be said to be unnaturally warm. If you ask me if it's a bit chilly, it's a bit chilly, but it's actually quite warm compared to outside. Ares-sama, that's probably because these ice has a secret to it. These ice doesn't just not melt. They probably has air within it and, rather than ice, it's closer to snow in nature. Snow contained air, therefore it had an outstanding insulation function. As a result, caves or houses made out of snow were surprisingly warm. Needless to say, the degree of warmth was only relative to the outside temperature. However, it did not change the fact that people would still feel more comfortable inside. Hydrus explained all of the finer details of the ice that would not disappear whilst admiring it due to it being the work of the water attribute. What's this? You lot aren't from around here, right? Whilst Ares and the rest were looking at the inside of the tavern like it was something strange, a dwarf who appeared to be the shopkeeper came and spoke to them. Looking at his appearance, Scorpius muttered an honest but rude observation, really, these guys, wherever I go, they all look the same. With regard to the dwarf race, Ruppes had once said 200 years ago, with the exception of Mizar, I can't tell them apart. Scorpius was also of the same opinion. If anything, Scorpius could not even distinguish between Mizar and the other dwarves. On the other hand, you're a familiar face. Why does every dwarf look exactly the same? How rude. Fundamentally, Scorpius afforded no courtesy to anyone other than Ruppes. Therefore, she would sometimes nonchalantly behave in a manner that might be taken as disrespectful by the other party. Thinking that it would only cause unnecessary problems with the way things were going, Karkanos made her fall back and sat in front of the counter instead. Sorry. She did not say that because she had any ill intent. By the way, Master, what kind of place is this city? What? You don't know? Yes. After all, we are a group of travelers. Travelers, in this world that's being dominated by the demon race? How eccentric. Or is it that you guys are just that confident in your own strength? Well, something like that. Contrary to his ridiculous speech pattern, Karkanos was someone who possessed good communication skills. At the very least, it was incomparable to that of Ares or Scorpius, who fell into a deep depression for a long time or became aggressive after Ruppes' defeat respectively. That was because he was the only one amongst the 12 stars who had chosen and successfully managed to blend in with the humanoids and live alongside them. Perhaps this was one of the contributing factors behind why Ruppes had decided to dispatch him to this place. Although it might have been unbelievable based on his usual frivolous actions, he actually had a fairly serious and patient personality. This city, it's called Nectar. This place used to be called the Scorching World Muspelheim. That, me are also aware of. That's why it's surprising to think that there would be a city where Muspelheim used to be. What age are you guys from? The time when this place was the scorching world was almost 200 years ago. Oh. So it's been like this since 200 years ago. Yeah. Even you should be aware that the humanoids lost against the demons 200 years ago. At that time, a lot of people either died or ran away from the land they used to live in. But amongst them, a few groups of people didn't manage to get away in time or refused to abandon the place where they used to live and ended up remaining in this land. What the shopkeeper said made sense. Indeed, as the humanoids were cornered and had their domain stolen, it was an impossible scenario to think that every single one of them had gotten away. It was natural that there were those that did not manage to get away or decided to fight until the very end. But the problem was after that. Whilst it was somewhat reasonable to think that there would be people that fit into those categories, it was unbelievable that those people would manage to survive and thrive in a city like this until this age. After all, it was impossible for them to have been overlooked all this time as they lived in the domain controlled by the demon race. Well, apparently, it was miserable after that. It was fine and all that they tried to retaliate against the demon race, but naturally, they were killed one after another. Anyways, so just as we thought it was all over for us, our king, Aquarius-sama, enclosed Muspelheim in ice and froze each and every demon that tried to get close. Seeing that, our ancestors must have believed that we had no other option but to cling on to that person. So in exchange for everyone swearing their loyalty, they managed to gain that his protection. Not only that, that person even gave us this city. So we became able to live here peacefully whilst being in the Dark Continent. Aha, I see. So something like that happened. Karkanos put his hands into his pocket and tried to take out a coin. But suddenly, he had a light bulb moment and searched the inside of his pocket. And what he took out was a small gemstone. Thank you, me heard a good story. This is payment. Oh, oi, isn't this a gemstone? I can't accept something precious like this. No. Unfortunately, me don't have this city's money. This is the least valuable and cheapest thing that I can pay you. And, no, but, this is too valuable. It's not a fair exchange. Then in that case, can I ask you for one more piece of information? If you agree, me will call it even. Okay, fine. I'll answer anything you ask. It'll still be too valuable even then. So, what do you want to know? After hearing the shopkeeper's words, Karkanos's GLA.S.SES suspiciously shone. What he was going to ask from now on were questions that would have been seen as suspicious if he was the one to first raise the topic. But now that the other party had told him that he would answer anything, Karkanos doubted that the dwarf would not follow through. Fundamentally, dwarves were a race with a strong sense of honor and hated getting into debt. As such, Karkanos believed that the other party would be the one to give him a correspondingly good trade offer if he were to give him a valuable gemstone. Karkanos had now obtained the verbal promise that he would answer anything Karkanos asked. And dwarves disliked going back on their word, especially if they had just said it. Things were going so well that it was scary. Karkanos unwarrantedly thought that perhaps he had an innate talent for being a strategist and praised himself. If these inner thoughts were to be heard by Pollux, she would have said, "Isn't it just a coincidence," and bluntly cut him off. Then, please tell me of a way to meet this country's queen. Keen. I mean the queen. 3. What are you talking about? Aquarius-sama is a man. Ah, I see. How rude of me. I just assumed they were a lady from the name. Karkanos lightly matched the flow of the conversation but signaled towards Scorpius and Ares. When he did, the two of them nodded ever so slightly. It seemed like things were going to become troublesome, that was what their eyes were saying. Well, yeah, directly meeting him is probably impossible. Though you might be able to seek an audience if you manage to achieve something very significant. Achieve something very significant. Well, for example, defeating the demons that come attacking or to defeat Pluto who's leading them, well, it's probably impossible though. For Pluto. That's the one leading the demons around here. Although not to the extent of Aquarius-sama, he's super strong and yeah, we've been staring each other down for the past few dozens of years. Apparently, for some reason, Aquarius-sama can't leave this city, but yeah, this city ended up suffering a few times because of him. He's a really annoying guy. Hearing that information, Karkinose's lips distorted into a smile. I see, so if we defeat that guy, we can meet Aquarius. Without making things messy. Rather than charging in, with this, we won't have to incur her bad mood. It's an easy solution. That was a good piece of information, Master. Are you going already? Yes. Me figured out what me have to do now. I see. If you drop by the area, come visit again. If it's you guys, I'll let you drink for free. He probably meant that the gemstone was a form of prepayment. What an honorable dwarf he was. Even though he was told it was payment for the information. Was him not accepting that considered too stubborn or just too well-natured? But Karkinose did not dislike a man like him. After replying, if there is a chance, I'd appreciate that, he left the tavern along with Scorpius and the rest. Asterisk at a location approximately 500 kilometers away from Nectar, there existed a city. A city, perhaps to be called that, it might have been just too big. The reason was that it had more surface area than the whole of the humanoids' domain combined. If anything, it was as big as a whole country. The appearance of the city, which was lined up with high-rise buildings made out of alchemy, was just like the hero Sei's hometown. It was so much so that one could mistake the location for one of Earth's developed major countries. Even during the night, the roads were lit up with mana. The scene of the location being filled with recreational facilities designed for the fulfillment of the inhabitants created a spectacle which would make the place befitting to be called the ruler's place above the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants could not be called good citizens by any means. If one were to look inside those recreational facilities, it was lined up with devilish games. Whack a Human. It was a game of hitting captured humans using a hammer and comparing scores with each other. Beastkin Arena. It was a game of making the tamed beastkin warriors kill each other and comparing whose pet was stronger so that they could boast in the end. Humanoids Darts. It was a game of putting the captured humanoids onto a target and dividing it up into different sections which were each signed a different point value so that they could throw darts at them. The demons walked around the city without feeling a shred of fear. If anything, they walked around as if they were reveling in the prime of their lives. They did not doubt the peace and tranquility that they were enjoying. They no longer even had humanoids in their minds. They lived in peace whilst believing that the Demon King would soon exterminate them. As such, what happened next was all too spontaneous. Loud footsteps resounded. What followed next was the sound of something giant roaring. A devilish roar shook the land itself and cut through the sky. The demons looked up in confusion and headed towards the sound to satisfy their curiosity whilst seemingly still stuck in the naive frame of mind that they had become accustomed to as a result of the long period of peace. And then they saw it. The appearance of a giant sheep which was walking in their direction whilst shaking the land itself. Its whole body was enveloped in rainbow-colored flames and it continued to mercilessly progress towards them whilst melting the buildings and squish.h.i+ng everything and everyone in its path. Wah, what is that? A monster. How can this be? It's too big. Where's the army? What exactly is the army doing? When that giant sheep moved, just by taking a step, buildings collapsed. Cultures which were built up. Traditions. Businesses. It did not even notice that it was destroying everything. Just by walking forward, everything was demolished and pulverized. But their nightmare had yet to end. Be attentive, demons. The peace and tranquility that you have enjoyed thus far shall now presently come to a conclusion. What appeared next was a giant monstrous scorpion. It cracked the ground and from the fissure, the full picture of something repulsive came to light. Buildings were cleared away with a single swing of its stinger, and the ground below it cracked with each light movement of its pincers. Similarly, from the sea appeared a crab monster which began to come ash.o.r.e. In retaliation, the demon race's army was mobilized and moved into attack. The demons who flew in the sky all fired arcane magic and the artillery shots all slammed into the three monsters one after another. Yet the monsters did not stop. Their steps did not falter. Even though they received all the attacks head-on, as if they were merely being bitten by mosquitoes, they continued to close in without even minding it in the slightest. Kishyae. The giant scorpion opened its pincers. An intense flame began to gather within the expanded pincers, and its heat started to increase exponentially. An inauspicious rumbling sound rang throughout the whole city, and everyone could feel the impending death that they would not be able to avoid. The army desperately attacked with the hope of stopping that attack. However, it had absolutely no effect. The monstrous scorpion cried out as if to ridicule them, then released the flames of destruction. That flame was like a heat flash that continued on indefinitely. The flame, which reached the edges of the horizon, burned and pierced through the buildings. Furthermore, by moving its pincers horizontally, the scorpion's flames raised the whole city. No, it was not just from the pincers. The scorpion also released the heat flash from its mouth and stinger and started attacking in all directions. Meanwhile, the rainbow-colored flames being breathed out by the sheep burned away large areas of land and repeatedly ignited things. At the same time, for an unknown reason, all of the shots fired by the army went towards and exploded on the crab as if they were sucked in. Then, in the next moment, a counterattack from the crab's pincer swatted them down. What was happening was truly a catastrophe. A catastrophe which had returned to them once again after the past of 200 years. In the face of these calamities, there was nothing the demons could do to retaliate. They could only run around, hide and pray that they would move on and wait until that moment where they did. Amidst the city which was being destroyed and within a tower which was larger than the other structures in its vicinity, a single man was shaking in fear with his eyes wide open. His name was Pluto, and this demon was level 420. He possessed abilities which Serpa.s. said even that of the 7 luminaries. However, rather than advancing into the humanoids' territories, he wanted to concentrate more on the city that he governed. Thus, he turned away Terra's invitation into the organization. As a result, he was in the position that he currently occupied. No, that was just an excuse. The truth was that he was only holed up in this place because he was scared. As one of the few survivors from 200 years ago, he knew of the individual called Rupa's Muffle. He knew of the living calamities which obeyed her. Everyone around him said that he was strong. They raised him up on a pedestal and said that he possessed more abilities than the people within the 7 luminaries. Alas, they were wrong. They were so wrong. There existed no one who was truly strong in this city. In the end, it was nothing more than a ranking amongst the weaklings. When compared with a true monster, they were nothing more than mere insects. That was why he refused the commander's seat for the expedition into the humanoids' domain. He did not want to become a member of the 7 luminaries. Because in the humanoids' domain, there were still bunches of monsters, and above all else, because he did not really believe that Rupa's Muffle would actually die from something of that degree. And his hunch turned out to be correct. Just look. This scene of despair filled his sight. This nightmare. The embodiments of H.E.L.L. which appeared before his eyes after 200 years had said. 200 years, huh? I guess it's on the longer side. With a shaking hand, Pluto placed a cigar in his mouth, then lit it. Ah, I already knew. I always knew that there would be a day like this one day. After all, this place is the G.O.Dis's playground and we're simply her dolls. As the only one to have noticed that fact, I ran around pitifully and lived until this point. I managed to sit in the seat of the strong. I was blessed by luxury until today. Ah. As such, the man smiled at himself in self-mockery, then inhaled one last time in satisfaction. Outside of the tower, the giant sheep opened its mouth and seemed to be about to breathe out a flame in his direction, but he had no thoughts of running away this late in time. An age would pass on. Just like how Rupa's Muffle had once risen up. And just like how she was overthrown. This time, it was their turn, nothing more, nothing less. He exhaled smoke and, looking at the flames which were closing in on him, smiled faintly. The ending turned out to be quite abrupt and disappointing, huh? A demon which knew of the events from 200 years ago muttered in a voice stained with resignation and, in the next instant, was erased by the rainbow-colored flames along with the building that he was in. With it, the glory of the demon race came to a conclusion. To this date, they persecuted and oppressed the humanoids, yet indulged themselves in peace and tranquility. Today was finally the time for them to pay up all of those debts. Those who knew of the past would come to the realization. Those of the younger generation who did not know of the past would come to experience fear without knowing anything. What it meant for the calamities who possessed wills of their own, the tyrannical 12 heavenly stars to soon all be gathered under the black-winged supreme ruler once more. The despair behind what that reality entailed. Author note, * 12 stars are allies. Even though we were wandering around in an area that had approximately the same surface area as J.A.Pan for over 130 chapters, as soon as we went outside of that area, we are greeted by the scene of the 12 stars burning away a surface area Serpa.S. That 5 and by the way, needless to say, whilst we call the regions outside of the humanoids domain the Dark Continent, it is actually not the Dark Continent at all. If anything, it would be something like East Blue from One Piece 6. If anything, the humanoids domain is way more dangerous however you think about it, as that place is home to Ruppas, Aries, Scorpius, Carcanos, Taurus, Pollux, Parthinos, the G.O.Dis's Avatar, Agacaros, Libra, Sagittarius, Leon, Bennett, the 7 heroes, the heavenly Ouroboros, the wood Ouroboros and the earth Ouroboros. Why are you all gathered in such a small area? Normally in stories, the basic template is when the characters leave behind a small stage to explore the bigger world, the outside world turns out to be more dangerous. But in this story, it is the opposite. Because the small world was swarming with monsters, the initial location is the true place of carnage. SEI, for the summoning place to be the end game already. Author note end, __1. 2 Nectar, is derived from Greek nectar, the fabled drink of the Greek G.O.Ds. The word is derived as a compound of nak, meaning death, and tar, meaning the ability to overcome. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/nectar #etymology. 3 Recall that Carcanos speaks in English in some parts. Queen above, italicized, is in English, this queen is in J.A.Panes. 4 Pluto, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Pluto. 5 According to Google, the surface area of J.A.Pan is 377,973 square kilometers. The surface area of Earth is 510.1 million square kilometers. If Midgard is similar in size to Earth, which it is suggested to be by the author, it's approximately 0.074% of the total surface area. So rip the humanoids, they really got cornered there lol. 6 One Piece, East Blue, is where the main character of that series originated from. For example, one area looks something like this. One Piece Fuchsia Village, One Piece Fuchsia Village, small village in East Blue, image from, __. Chapter 139, Fire Ouroboros used sleep talk. Fire Ouroboros used subst.i.toot, 1 raw link, December 4, 2016, translator, Tumorfreethoughts/TPSTT, January 9, 2020, editor 1, Hand of Vecna, January 17, 2020, editor 2, Key, 2020/01/2020, translation link, _____________ Ares and the others annihilated the demon city within a single night. On the following day, they were invited to the Ice Palace. Inside the palace, all 4 walls were made out of ice that did not melt. Additionally, there were knights, adorned with ice swords and armors, lined up in an unmoving posture. Ares wondered if they felt cold inside. Perhaps the thing inside was not a living person. No, it might have been that there was no one inside in the first place. Sitting on the throne was a young man in extravagant clothing, resting his arms on the armrests and looking down upon the 5 individuals in Ares's group as if to evaluate them. But his observation must have finished. He opened his arms wide in an exaggerated manner and spoke towards the 5 of them in such a way as if he was reading out a script. You have done us a great justice, travelers. Truly splendid was your achievement of striking down Pluto. Thus, we shall reward you with whatever your heart desires. Property, honor, authority? Speak as you will. Hearing that, Scorpius muttered, "Ain't that generous?" Additionally, she questioned the hilarity of the whole situation. It seemed that, even after they had gotten this far, he had yet to understand whom he was speaking to. Even taking into account that 200 years of time had passed, for him to forget their faces, what a disinnumerable man he was. Scorpius ran her fingers through her hair and stared at him in contempt. My, is that so? In that case, I wish to meet Aquarius, Mr. Subst.I.Toot. Huh? What are you saying? I am Aquasari, but I have no business with the carrier. Ganymedes, the one we have business with is the water pitcher. Too, after being called his real name, the fake king who had called himself Aquarius trembled. Exactly, he was definitely not Aquarius. Needless to say, he was not a completely unrelated existence either. He was actually an extraordinarily competent level 600 magical beast who was a.s. signed the role of carrier as Aquarius was lazy and hated acting on her own. Although he did not possess any special abilities, if it was a pure punching contest based on stats, he would be able to put up a good fight even if the opponent was caster. Having said that, that statement was as good as saying he was nothing special when compared to the 12 stars combatants. As such, he was not someone who would pose a threat to Scorpius and the rest. With what had just happened, he too started to recall who the people he was looking down upon were. His face gradually but visibly turned blue and he started cold sweating. Why, you lot are, no, you guys are. 3 We're going to PAS.S through. You're not going to say that you won't let us, right? You, understood. In this predicament, the knights in the surroundings showed no indication of taking any action. If there were people inside, they would most likely have either been fluid-teared by the change in the situation or tried to reproach the group for the disrespect they showed towards the person that they believed was their king. At the very least, they would most likely have shown some form of reaction. But there was no reaction whatsoever. This meant that, as expected, these knights had no egos of their own and were like puppets. Scorpius and the rest said by Ganymedes' side and casually opened the curtain which was hanging at the far end of the throne room. Apparently, in this palace, the area behind the throne led to a room that was exclusively for the king. What a simple layout it was. Aquarius was also easy to find. She was at the far end of the room that they had just entered. There, a giant water pitcher was boldly enshrined. Its height seemed to be approximately 3 meters. It looked to be of a size which seemed like a HA.S.SLE to carry around, however, for someone at their level, it was not a size that they had to be mindful about. After all, their master, Rupas, was someone who could casually throw the Dragon King, who had a length of 170 meters, with a single hand. It's been a while, Aquarius. Why don't you show yourself? Oh, what's this? I haven't heard this voice in a while. It's quite nostalgic. What responded to Scorpius's call was the voice of a childish young girl. The one who popped out from the opening of the water pitcher was a little girl whose outer appearance looked to be no older than around 12 years of age. She was wearing strange cherry blossom-colored clothing, a traditional clothing item called a kimono from the country of Wakoku which was said to have existed over 200 years ago, for on her head, there was an ornament modeled in the shape of a cherry blossom. The color of her hair was deep blue and the color of her eyes were a shade of blue. At first glance, she was an adorable young girl. That girl then smiled so brightly at her old friends that it seemed as if flowers could suddenly bloom. V7 Character 1 Aquarius, Illu.S. From Alba Light novel. However, by now, it was extremely normal procedure for the outer appearance and inner self to not sync up. Even amongst characters thus far, this trait was particularly true for the 12 stars. Needless to say, she too was not at the age that she appeared to be. No, perhaps whether the very concept of age existed for her or not was questionable. After all, she was neither a magical beast nor a person. She was not even a golem. She was a piece of equipment with a will created by the G.O.Dis, in other words, an item. Divine artifact, the queen of the seas, Aquarius. 5 That was her true nature. Even the little girl, who was currently showing her face, was only there so that communication between the item and the others would become easier. It was nothing more than a fake body made out of water. In the end, her true body was the water pitcher itself. My. It's the lesbian scorpion, dumb crab, and the sheep brat. Oi, isn't this rather nostalgic? And the ones at the back are, who are you guys again? It's Phoenix. It's Hydrus. Oh, that's right. The Yakitori and the blue snake. It's the immortal bird. It's the water snake. Also, although it was unknown if it was because her true nature was a piece of equipment or not, she just could not remember people's names. As such, regardless of whether it was an enemy or an ally, she would call them by their species rather than their name. The problem was so severe that she could not even remember Rapaz's name and simply called her Master Sama. Fortunately, whilst the way she spoke was quite horrible, she was not a violent individual like Leon. If anything, she had a favorable relations.h.I+P with everyone, and amongst the 12 stars, she was someone in the moderate faction. She rested her elbows on the edges of the water pitcher and spoke whilst smiling with a chuckle. And? Do you have some business with me? Well, since you came here anyway, if you guys just came here to have a drink, I'll be hospitable and take them out. Yeah. That's nice and all, but we didn't come here to have fun. The truth is Rapaz-sama has been resurrected. And so, she sent us here for the sake of bringing you back. Ah. I see. So it's already been 200 years. That was quick. Even after hearing about Rapaz's resurrection, Aquarius did not show any form of surprise. If anything, she answered with a response that suggested she was fully aware of everything from the beginning. Seeing this, Scorpius felt more than a little jealous. Even though she herself had not been informed of anything whatsoever, people like Parthinos, Pollux, and Aquarius had been told what was going to happen. Scorpius understood the reasoning behind it. Rapaz must have actually wanted to hide the information from everyone, including her own allies. But if she did not say anything, even if people were to be put in charge of the Ouroboroses, they might abandon their posts halfway through or, in the worst-case scenario, wake the Ouroboros themselves as a means to take revenge on the humanoids. As such, in order to nail down all the contingencies, she informed them of what was to come. Scorpius understood that. But, what was vexing would still be vexing. But now's not a good time. Please wait for a little bit. Did something happen? If you ask if something happened, well, yeah, something happened. You should already be aware that I'm sealing the fire Ouroboros. But you see, this fire Ouroboros doesn't sleep very soundly. Approximately every 20 years or so, it creates a clone of itself as an avatar and roams around like it's sleepwalking. And worse yet, it's annoying because it's half asleep and ends up burning away everything in its surroundings. Aquarius muttered as if she was tired of being HA.S.sled and then sighed out loud. Well, once you take care of the avatar, it calms down. Although, in the end, it's still just a half-asleep avatar, so its abilities are actually not that significant. But even then, it's still an Ouroboros's clone. I shouldn't have to say this, but it's strong enough that some random magical beast or demon that you could find anywhere couldn't even be his opponent. I see. In other words, until that's defeated, you can't move freely. No wonder you were having a hard time against someone like Pluto. Ah, that guy. Well, that guy's probably too much for the carrier to handle. If it's one-on-one, the carrier wouldn't lose, but against that large of an army, the carrier would have a hard time alone. Aquarius said as such and looked at Ganymedes. Although she was not condemning him or anything, Ganymedes still shriveled up. Well, he was whatever anyways. He was just a small fry, so even if we left him alone, it was no problem. Hey. If you put it like that, our work was just a complete waste of effort. Ha, my bad. Anyways, back on the topic of the Ouroboros. It looks like you brought a fill-in for me, but as you'd expect, it's a bit too much for the Yakitori and the blue snake to handle. So until that's sorted out, I can't come with you guys. Sorry. Phoenix and Hydrus were by no means weak. If anything, those two were quite strong magical beasts. One was an immortal bird which possessed high regenerative ability and firepower and was ranked as the strongest species amongst the bird-type magical beasts. The other was part of a subspecies amongst the Dragonkeen, which was said to be the strongest race. It was a water dragon which possessed high attack power and arcane magic power. If either one of them had the intention to do so, both of them had sufficient power to be able to change the geography of the planet itself. Yet even then, Aquarius judged it to be not enough. In that case, Aquarius, me and the rest will join in to subjugate the Avatar. Huh? I'd appreciate that, but is that fine? Yes. Me were all ordered to bring you back. If it is necessary, me will help out. Karkanos winked and turned around to look back at his comrades who were behind him. In response, Ares nodded whilst Hydrus and Phoenix smiled back in a.s. scent. The only one who might have had a problem was Scorpius, however, even she understood that this was the most optimal approach. In the end, although she still seemed a little reluctant, she spewed out, "Just do whatever you want." Okay. Then come with me tomorrow. We'll go make the sleepyhead Ouroboros sleep together. Aquarius said merrily, followed by Ares and the rest smiling to match the atmosphere. From the looks of it, this time, there would be no battle between the 12 stars before they could be recovered. The following day, Ares and the rest were led to the bas.e.m.e.nt of the palace. No, perhaps rather than calling it the bas.e.m.e.nt of the palace, it might have been more appropriate to call it the bas.e.m.e.nt of the city of Nectar. Underneath the layer of ice that served as land was an extremely large prison made out of ice. Furthermore, its temperature was such that if an ordinary person were to be in here, even if they were wearing heavy winter clothes designed to keep warm, they would freeze to death in a very short duration of time. It was 100 degrees Celsius below freezing point 6. That was the temperature of this S.P.A.ce. Notwithstanding that, Hydrus and Aquarius, who were resistant to the water attribute aside, even Ares and Scorpius were walking around this S.P.A.ce without minding the temperature in the slightest. Although it might seem like it was being repeated over and over again, common sense did not work well against such high-level monsters. If they were to suck U.MB to something of this degree, they would not be able to bear against any sort of water attribute arcane magic used by their enemies. However much of a weakness they might have towards the water attribute, if it was merely a low temperature, then it was not a significant threat for Ares and the others. Although they would indeed feel cold and would not come to feel like it was a place that they would like to stay in for a long time, it was just that. Ganymedes, who was carrying Aquarius's water pitcher, walked foremost, followed by the other 5 individuals. Eventually, when they reached the deepest part of the ice prison, Ares and the rest got to see the appearance of that thing. So this is an Ouroboros. This is insanely ridiculous. Even its single nose hair is bigger than this mistress with my humanoid form undone. It was an enormous living creature. A living creature which was way too enormous. What was visible was merely the tip of its face. Only the very tip of its nose. Everything except for that was buried underneath the ground. The part that they could see was merely the slightest fraction of the entire body. Yet, even that slightest fraction was bigger than Scorpius's whole body when she was in her magical beast form. Imagining the full body of such a living creature alone was already ridiculous. I see, no wonder Master wanted to seal it. Before anything else, before whether it's strong or not comes into question, it's the type of monster that needs to be prevented from moving from the onset. Hey, is this sealing method alright? I heard from Rupasama, but apparently, Ouroboroses are not actually ent.I.ties that can even be sealed in the first place. Wasn't it something like, by stabilizing the surrounding environment and making them think, the world is still at peace, they won't wake up, or something? So that's how they're sealing it at the other locations. But honestly, I use a different method. Or more like, with that kind of optimistic method, this guy would wake up on its own. I said it before, but this guy really doesn't sleep that well. What Ares recalled was the previous incident with the sealing of the heavenly Ouroboros. After that, they received an explanation from Rupaz. She explained that the sealing of the heavenly Ouroboros was not something that could actually be called a seal, but was merely maintaining the status quo of the surroundings. However, this fire Ouroboros' seal was clearly different. The entire environment had been changed in a way which could not be any more contradictory from how it was previously. In response to Ares's questions, Aquarius answered whilst playing with her own hair. My method is actually very simple. By making it cold, I'm just inducing a sense of sleepiness, so that it'll just continue sleeping. This Ouroboros is actually quite easy to understand, you see. When its surroundings are hot, it becomes active, and when it's cold, it becomes dull. That's exactly why I was selected to be the one to seal him, even though my attribute doesn't match with him. Whilst explaining as such, Aquarius glanced in front of her looking like it was too much of a HA.S.SLE. At the end of that line of sight, was a single young man in front of the Ouroboros loitering around like a lost soul. V7 Character 2 Fire Ouroboros' avatar, Ilu.S. Tracian from Alba light novel. Well, even then it still occasionally sends out a half-asleep avatar though. So that thing is the avatar. Yeah, there's no mistake. Karkanos asked to confirm it and Aquarius answered. As usual, she only had the upper half of her body leaning against the water pitcher and did not show any indication of moving on her own. Even though Ganymedes didn't seem too tired, Karkanos felt a little sorry for him. Even though its body is that big, the avatar is a humanoid form, huh? I don't know the details, but apparently, the skill known as avatar will always result in a humanoid form when used. There are 4 types of avatars overall. Spirits derived from of divine power. Fairies derived from of spirits. Demons derived from of arcane power. And lastly, there's a method where, by inserting a part of the soul into the womb of a living person, one is able to derive a clone of themselves. The one that's most problematic is the 4th type. After all, because it possesses actual flesh of its own, they're indistinguishable from a normal person, and even if observing eye is used, their true ident.I.tie can't be seen through. In response to Hydras's query, Aquarius gave an explanation. Spirits and fairies did not need to be explained much further. Pollux and Castor, who were their comrades, were in this category. Strictly speaking, it was difficult to consider the demons to be avatars. After all, they were arcane magic which possessed a will of their own and were not clones of anyone in particular. As for the last category, she could currently give no corresponding example. Although Ares and the rest had been dealing with an avatar of the 4th category until just recently. Aquarius-sama, what category does your current appearance belong to? Ah, this is part of the 1st category. It's a type known as a spirit. Aquarius responded to Phoenix's question. Even whilst giving all of these explanations, Aquarius's line of sight was still fixated on the fire Ouroboros' avatar. At that very moment, it showed no indication of moving. However, if they were to attempt to do anything to it, it would no doubt start to move. In other words, as long as they did not instigate anything, they had some time to buff themselves a bit. Aquarius activated a unique skill and applied it to everyone else. Skill, Sadikbia. 7 The secret lucky star, Sadikbia, its effect was to bestow allies with a dedicated good luck star. Once the good luck star was granted, for the next few fixed number of attacks, that ally would be able to luckily evade them. As such, it was an evasion support skill. Putting things bluntly, it promised the buffed allies absolute evasion. Nevertheless, it was certainly not an all-powerful invincibility skill. If the enemy was like Bennett Nash, who used insane speed to continuously attack, the good luck star would quickly run out. Alternatively, there were also enemies with a skill like Libra's Brachium, which would bypass the effect and deal direct damage. Furthermore, there was something called priorities amongst skills. For example, if there were 2 skills, one with absolute accuracy and the other with absolute evasion, and they were to go head-to-head, the skill with the higher priority would take effect. And whilst this skill, Sadikbia, allowed the buffed individual to enjoy the effect multiple times, it sat low on the priority ladder in exchange. As a consequence, it came with the weakness that almost every absolute accuracy skill would bypass this skill's effect. However, even taking that into consideration, this skill's supportive effects could still not be described as anything but almost cheat-like. Now then. After so long, we're fighting as a team again. I'll be relying on you, everyone. Understood. Let's go, Phoenix. All right. Hearing Aquarius's words, Hydrus and Phoenix responded in high spirits. It was the subordinate's role to strike first as the vanguard. The blue and red magical beast combo both charged at the same time and commenced an attack on the Fire Ouroboros's avatar. Author note, the Utsasimi technique is dirty, as expected the water pitcher is dirty 8 anyways. With this, Aquarius has become an evasion cheat character. The thing I used as reference is FF11's Utsasimi technique. She also has other evasion skills such as a skill which lets her absolutely evade long-range attacks or a skill which can only be used once a day as her trump card but lets her absolutely evade all skills directed at her within a specified period of time. Even though she doesn't move, she evades them. She just evades them all. Ganymedes carries the water pitcher around and tries his hardest to run away to evade them. But because Ganymedes is not also endowed by the skill, they will hit him. And besides evading, she will launch a bombardment of ice attacks under the category of water attribute arcane magic at the enemy, so she's actually strong. Q. If Ganymedes becomes unable to battle first, would she still evade them? A. She will. She will create waves using arcane magic to carry the water pitcher around and evade them. Q. Can she still move even if Ganymedes becomes unable to battle? A. She can. The water pitcher can roll around or she can create waves with arcane magic to carry herself and move around. Q. Isn't Ganymedes just redundant? A. Author note end, __1 sleep talk. Subst.I.toot. So, here's the thing. All the chapters with the T.I.tle template of X, person, used Y, skill, were actually X's Y. It was originally translated as such, but was later retrospectively amended to match the Pokemon theme. In this chapter, the second part actually used the wording for used. So the literal translation would be, Fire Ouroboros's sleep talk. Fire Ouroboros used subst.I.toot. 2 Ganymedes, also Ganymede, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Ganymede_left_mythology. A divine hero whose homeland was Troy. In one version of the myth, Zeus falls in love with his beauty and abducts him in the form of an eagle to serve as cupbearer in Olympus. Is it just me or are these Greek lores sometimes so weird? The water carrier represented by the zodiacal constellation Aquarius is Ganymede, a beautiful Phrygian youth. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Aquarius_astrology. 3 Just as there are quite a lot of words for I, there are also a lot of words for you in J.A.Paints. The first U, Omi, is the U which is used when someone in a higher position, or friends, speaks to someone in a lower position. Whereas the second U, plus Gata, Anata and Gata, is used when someone in a lower position speaks to someone in a higher position, or equal position but in a respectful setting. Do note that there's an antiderivative, which can be used as an insult. There are actually quite a few other ways to say you, but if you want to learn them, you should find a proper source since using the wrong one could get problematic, like really problematic. Honestly, now that I think about it, if a person doesn't know the nuances of J.A.Pain's language and says you when they go visit J.A.Pan, there are so many ways it could go wrong. Edit, just as a courtesy note. You often see Time or Kisama for you in anime, but never ever use them to address another J.A.Pain's person unless you are specifically trying to disrespect or swear at them. 4 Wakoku is pretty much J.A.Pan. WA is used to mean J.A.Pan, and Koku is country, even though it's written in katakana in the raw. You might have seen / heard washoku or wafyu before, which means J.A.Pain's food and J.A.Pain's style respectively. Kimono is self-explanatory. 5 Divine Artifact, the Queen of the Seas, Aquarius, with Aquarius / superscript on top, 6-100 degrees Celsius equals -148 degrees Fahrenheit. 7 Sadikbia, Gamma Aquarii, is a binary star in the constellation of Aquarius. It is one of the brighter members of the constellation. It bore the traditional name Sadaqbiya, from an Arabic expression, Sad al-Aqsbiya, meaning luck of the homes, tense. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/gamma_aquarii. 8 Utsasimi Technique, from Final Fantasy XI. Chapter 140, Phoenix Ustlir, 1 Raw link, December 10, 2016, Translator, Tumorfreethoughts/tpstt, January 12, 2020, Editor 1, Hand of Vecna, January 28, 2020, Editor 2, Key, January 31, 2020, Translation link, ___ Notice 1, all relevant Ganymedes has been retrospectively changed to Ganymede. Apologies for the mistake. Ganymedes is the cupbearer for Zeus and Ganymede is the cup carrier for Aquarius constellation. Raw used the spelling, /character, for Ganymedes, but I changed it based on my discretion. See last chapter's footnote for details and lores. Notice too, this is my last chapter for this batch. Chapter 141 to 150 will be published over at. I will update the next chapter link at the bottom when the chapter is published. I haven't been informed of the EDA but probably in 4 or 5 days' time. I hope to see you all when it is time for chapter 151, EDA, if everything goes well, March 16, 2020. Haha, we wish XD but let's be optimistic. X, _____ in the face of the two individuals, Phoenix and Hydrus, charging towards it, the fire Ouroboros's avatar showed no reaction. It was unknown whether it judged it to be unnecessary to retaliate against their attacks or if it was simply unable to keep up with the two's speed. Whatever the case, it was convenient that it wasn't moving. Phoenix sharply glared at the avatar whilst attacking. Amongst all skills, there existed a few skills that were exclusive to magical beasts and could not be used by humanoids. One such skill went by the name of Shackle Eyes. 2 The effects of the skill decreased the targeted individual's defense and made them unable to move for a very short period of time. Following this, Phoenix raised his arm up, causing a fire twister to rise up from below the avatar's feet. It was the fire attribute Arcane Magic Flare Tornado. 3 Although the firepower was by no means high, it continually hit the enemy and was able to restrain them until the skill was completed. However, the damage caused by that skill was nil. After all, the enemy was the fire Ouroboros, an existence which could very well be called the pinnacle of fire attribute creatures. Against an ent.I.Ti like that, no matter how strong of a fire attribute was to be used, it would be meaningless. If anything, it might have had the opposite effect as the Ouroboros could simply absorb the attacks to regenerate its HP. Therefore, this was nothing more than a way to delay him for a moment. The real deal, in this case, was the attack from Hydrus. Tidal Wave. 4 out of the water attribute spells, which was the speciality of Megrez, there was a high-tier arcane magic called Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave was a large area of effect arcane magic that conjured a vectored tsunami which was then used to crush the enemies. The spell was one of the core skills amongst the water attribute arcane magic due to its impact strength, scale, and cost of usage all being outstanding. As a consequence, it was not an exaggeration to say that whether an individual could proficiently use this skill or not determined their true value as a specialized water attribute arcane magic user. Within the prison made out of ice, which was by no means tight, height 50 m, length 1 km and width 800 m, a tsunami which covered the S.P.A.C. raged about. Aquarius and the others deployed a barrier to completely prevent the skill from affecting them. However, the avatar was subjected to the raging water. Subsequently, the tsunami continued on and almost hit the real body of the Ouroboros, a scenario which was only avoided because Aquarius deployed a barrier to prevent it. You idiot! Don't hit the real body. What if it wakes up? I'm sorry. Their original plan was to keep the Ouroboros with the bad sleeping habits asleep. If they were to end up waking him, it would be counterproductive. After being scolded by Aquarius, Hydrus lowered his head. Seeing that appearance, Phoenix laughed to make a fool out of him, which caused Hydrus's face to become indignant. Yet even with the two of them attacking in that way, the avatar had yet to move. It was still standing as upright as it had been originally. B.A.S.T.A.R.D. He's underestimating us. Is he saying that our attacks aren't even worth avoiding? We'll crush that complacency of his. Looking at the still unperturbed appearance of the Avatar, the two of them irritatedly charged and kicked it at the same time. The power of their kicks was not insignificant. Just the previous day, when they invaded the Demon City, this simple kick destroyed a SKYSC.R.A. per with a height of over 50 m in one hit. Furthermore, the wind pressure which was created by that kick alone collectively destroyed many buildings which were behind that SKYSC.R.A. per. The Avatar was .H.I.T by the two of them at the same time. With perfect timing, the two individuals slammed it right into the Avatar's face. However, as soon as it connected, both of their faces distorted in astonishment. What the H.E.L.L is this? It's so hard. And it's heavy. Even though we slammed it right from the front, it won't even budge a little. How were they to describe this bizarre tactile sensation? Perhaps if they were ordinary people, they would have logist it to something like, it felt like kicking steel. However, for those two individuals, destroying steel was as easy as destroying a sandcastle. As a consequence, they were not able to find an A.N.A.logi which suited the situation. The enemy was simply that hard. Simply that heavy. Nevertheless, it seemed they were successful in at least grabbing its attention somewhat. The Avatar, which had not bothered to move until now, moved in an easygoing manner and took hold of the two individuals' ankles. New. B.A.S.T.A.R.D. So strong. Surprisingly, just from the strength of its grip, their ankles were placed under so much pressure that their bones shattered. The two of them immediately assessed the situation and determined that it was impossible to escape. The moment they did so, they used knife hand strike to amputate their own feet and created some distance between themselves and the enemy. A moment afterwards, a flame blew out of Phoenix's leg and his foot was regenerated. For Hydrus, on the other hand, new flesh grew out of the amputated cross-section and a new foot was materialized. While this was happening, as if to follow up on his attack on the two of them, the Avatar also used a knife hand strike towards them, sending invisible blades in their direction. But due to the effect of Sadakbia, the blades went around the two individuals as if they were actively dodging them on their own, causing the attacks to miss. In this brief period of time, the two of them regained their posture and then flared up with rage. Your little s.h.I+t. Don't look down on me. I'll kill you, B.A.S.T.A.R.D. One would wonder what had happened to their usual CLA.S.C-ness. After being thrown into a complete frenzy, the two individuals' eyes became bloodshot and they started raging about violently as magical beasts. Phoenix first conjured flames out of both of his arms, eventually merging them together in order to create a S.H.I plus New York White Orb. The orb which was fired was one of the highest tier fire attribute single target offensive arcane magic. This attack penetrated elemental resistance, even if someone had the same fire attribute affinity. It was the origin of flames which scorched everything. Its name was, Burn Them All. Prometheus. 5 An extremely hot white ball of flames, which Serpent.S. said even 10,000,000 degrees C in temperature, directly hit the Avatar, slightly melting the surrounding ice which was not supposed to melt. 6 And in unison with Phoenix's attack, Hydrus also activated arcane magic which ranked in the highest tier but of the water attribute. Although overall, it was one-upped by Hermes Trismegistus, which had been previously used by Dina. Still, in terms of single-target water attribute arcane magic, it was undoubtedly the one with the highest destructive power. The skill's effects were simple in that it used the raw power of water to crush the enemy to death. 7 The skill was strong enough that, with its momentum, a target hit by the skill could be sent flying to the bottom of the sea. Get crushed and die. OSHA.N.U.S. 8 As if all the water in the seas had been compressed, an extremely heavy Ma.S.S of water slammed into the Avatar at the same time as Prometheus. Yet, the two of them were not finished with their attacks. Now that the extremely hot flames and Ma.S.Civ amount of water had violently exploded on the Avatar, the upcoming attack would be the real deal. The flames from Prometheus evaporated and vaporized OSHA.N.U.SS water which, as a result, exploded. And it was not just a simple explosion. Phoenix and Hydrus simultaneously erected a spherical barrier around the Avatar and contained the explosion. By doing so, the large-scale combustion, which would ordinarily have been enough to burn away a very large continent, was trapped in a spherical S.P.A.C.E with a radius of 1.5 m. Luminescence. Followed by an explosion. Due to it being contained in that small S.P.A.C.E, the visual representation of the blast was toned down. Nevertheless, the might of its power was definitely at the level of a catastrophic disaster. The sight of the Avatar was obstructed due to the smoke which was formed from the surplus of energy that overflowed from the attack. In this situation, Hydrus and Phoenix smiled after believing that they had won the battle. Did we do it? There isn't even a need to check. There's no one who'd be fine after taking an attack like that. From the looks of it, it seemed the two of them were completely convinced that they had won. Ares, impressed with what had happened, was watching the scene with his eyes wide open. That attack just then was actually amazing. If it had critically hit him, even he would not be able to get away without taking a large amount of damage. It was even possible that his HP would have been shaved down to a dangerous point with just one hit. Wow, that was amazing, both of you. Nice fight. That was a better result than me was expecting. I guess if you asked me if it was amazing, it would be, but. Aquarius, what do you think? In contrast to Ares and Karkinos who gave honest praises, Scorpius's response was somewhat cold. Seeing Scorpius like this, Aquarius smiled bitterly then followed up with an honest opinion of her own. Well, I suppose it was a job well done. You guys shaved down more of his HP than I was expecting. At the same time as Aquarius was saying that, a compressed heat flash came flying out of the smoke. The two blasts of heat flash missed the two of them once again due to the effect of Sadokbia. However, the attack from the red shadow which followed immediately afterwards could not be avoided. That shadow gripped the two individuals' heads before they could even react, then slammed them into the ground. The floor made out of ice, which had barely melted even from Prometheus, cracked from the impact and the whole city of Nectar shook like there was an earthquake. Of course, Phoenix and Hydrus did not just take the attack without retaliating. Even whilst in the position of being pushed down on the ground and bleeding profusely, they kicked him back. But it was fruitless. The Avatar did not budge even the tiniest amount. The Avatar relied on its raw strength to slam their two heads together before releasing them from its hands and roundhouse kicking the two of them. After just one attack from the Avatar, they were sent flying away as if they were withered twigs, resulting in the two of them caving right into the ice wall. Due to the excessive damage they had suffered, their limbs were broken and one of Phoenix's arms was torn off. Tisk, you've done it now. S.H.I+T, don't underestimate us. The two of them immediately started regenerating their wounds, during which time, they leapt off the wall to punch at the Avatar. They began to barrage the Avatar with punches and kicks with such a speed that not even the 7 luminaries would be able to follow them with their eyes, yet every one of those attacks were rendered ineffective. They were all blocked, parried and dodged. When one thought that the two of them had disappeared and reappeared behind the Avatar had already circled around behind them. Furthermore, with what looked like a light push, the two of them were knocked down. No, the attack did not even connect. Even that push had missed due to the effect of Sadokbia. Nonetheless, because of the wind pressure from that push, the two of them were knocked down. What? How can this be? We're being treated like children. The Avatar's eyes thinned as if it was getting bored, then it dropped a finest.H.I+NG attack on top of them. An impact sounded after a delay. A shockwave exploded from the spot. Yet, the two individuals did not feel pain upon their bodies. When they opened their eyes to check the attack which had been coming down upon them, the fist had been stopped by Karkinos's frame moments before hitting them. Well done. Both of you fought magnificently. Having said that, it's about time to switch players. From now on, me and the others will take on the responsibility. Karkinos gripped his fist and released a counter. Utilizing the enemy's attack itself, a single hit from a Kyuben struck the Avatar's cheek, sending the Avatar, which had barely budged up until this point, into the ice wall. In the face of this unexpected situation, the Avatar was blinking in confusion whilst Karkanos got his scissors out. During this time, Ares and Scorpius came to stand on either side of Karkanos. Everyone, watch out for that guy's grabs. It seems that it's a skill with absolute accuracy. Because the absolute evasion effect that should have been cast on Phoenix and Hydrus didn't work at all. Is what she said. Did you hear that? Can you handle it? After receiving Aquarius's warnings, Scorpius prompted Ares without breaking the smile that she had on her face. Upon being asked so, Ares strongly replied with a face full of confidence. It's fine. If I know about it, I'll manage somehow. The moment he said that, he charged straight in, closing in right next to the Avatar in an instant. As both sides' affinities were fire attribute, Ares's action could not be called anything but reckless. The reason was that his opponent was an existence which stood at the pinnacle of the fire attribute. On the other hand, in terms of a fire attribute magical beast, Ares was categorically as good as the weakest. In other words, this was a fight which should have never even happened in the first place. Nevertheless, Ares was no longer the weakest existence right now. He had had his abilities honed up by Ruppas. He also had the equipment which he had received from her. As such, there was no need for him to fear anything. All he had to do was trust in the power of his master and face his enemy with all of his might. Hey! Ares continuously hit the Avatar with his fists. The gloves that he was wearing allowed him to bypass the Avatar's attribute resistance and deal damage. In terms of numerical value, the damage dealt was 99,999. It was because the higher the enemy's maximum HP, the stronger Ares's attacks became. In response, the Avatar tried to counterattack, but it did not hit. The Avatar's attacks against Ares, who was protected by the good luck star, missed the target as if the attacker was purposefully avoiding the enemy. It did not even scratch the target. As such, the Avatar tried to grab Ares. However, this attack had already been showcased in the battle against Phoenix and Hydrus. Ares quickly dodged backwards and, utilizing his falling momentum, put his hands on the ground and spun his body further away. Whilst Ares continuously somersaulted backwards multiple times, a scorpion's pincer came flying in, grabbing the Avatar's arm in the process. The equipment, which was given by Ruppas, was already showing its value. Unfortunately, the specialty of gripping the enemy is not exclusive to you. Scorpius stuck her tongue out from her mouth and licked her purple lips, then proceeded to pull the Avatar by relying on her raw strength. After the distance between her and the Avatar became close enough, she used a claw to attack. After inflicting the Avatar with her poison which ate away even mana itself, she kicked him away and created some distance once more. The one to follow up with an attack in this situation was Aquarius. The apparition of the young girl hid into the water pitcher, then Ganymede directed the opening of the water pitcher in the Avatar's direction. Freeze Duster! Aquarius's voice resounded from inside the water pitcher. Immediately following that, a countless number of ice shards were blasted from the inside of the water pitcher. Furthermore, the velocity at which the shards came flying out was truly ridiculous. Due to them being blasted out so fast, the shards all looked as if they were connected to one another. If it were a.n.a.logist to something, it would be like a wave made out of ice. If someone who was unable to keep up with the extreme velocity of the shards with their eyes saw this scene, they would only be able to register that a gigantic wave was coming out of the water pitcher. However, even whilst being showered in a storm of ice, the Avatar leapt straight towards Aquarius. But this time, a contradictory phenomenon occurred. As if being sucked in by gravity, his attack along with his body was pulled towards Karkanos. This was one of Karkanos's skills, Acellus Borealis. 9 The effect of this skill redirected all physical attacks to himself. In other words, it was an absolute get-hit skill that could not be avoided by any means. The Avatar's palm was forced to grab Karkanos and slam him down into the ground. However, Karkanos immediately stood back up, took hold of the Avatar's head, then slammed it down onto the ground in the same manner. Karkanos then topped it off with an ordinary automatic attack. A kick from Karkinos's long legs slammed into the Avatar's neck, sending its body flying away. Do it now, Ares. Leave it to me. Messertham version 3. In this situation where the Avatar was thrown off his stance, a rainbow-colored raging fireball was fired at it without a moment of delay. And the Avatar had no way to avoid it. Then, the moment before it hit, its mouth curled up into a smile, the Avatar was swallowed up by G.O.D killing flames. Author note, the two individuals who served as the dogs who bite, guinea pigs, as their A.S. signed role suggests, they lost. Well, they still fought bravely until the end. Though, I will advocate for them and say that they are actually not weak. If anything, they are super strong. Having said that, now that we are having a battle in the latter half of the story, they may seem like weak characters. Shackle Eyes Leer Flare Tornado Fire Spin Prometheus, one of the highest tier fire attribute single target offensive arcane magic. The skill ignores the enemy's elemental attribute resistance and deals a large amount of damage. Although it also depends on the power level of the user, when this arcane magic is used by Phoenix, it can reach extreme temperatures as high as 10,000,000 degrees C10. This temperature is approximately the same as the plasma that is blown out of the surface of the Sunday Zeton. It's lukewarm. 11 OSHA.N.U.S. In text, I wrote it as if all the water in the seas had been compressed, but it's actually not heavy to that extent. In the end, as if is just as if. Honestly speaking, it's just hyperbole. In actuality, it's only about a few 100 billion metric tons worth of weight. So it's not even 1% of all the water in the ocean. Although, it's still a lot if you think about it. 12 Although this skill is boasted as being in the strongest CLA.S of water attribute single target arcane magic, because the skill is reliant on the user's stats, Hydras's attack is actually not that strong. 13 As an A.N.A. Logi, it would be something like making a Gyarados use the Hydro Pump skill. Use Aqua Tail. Or Waterfall. 14, author note end, __ 1 Leer. 2 Shackle Eyes, 3 Flare Tornado, 4 Tidal Wave, 5 Prometheus, is a T.I.10 who stole fire from the G.O.DS and gave it to humans. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Prometheus. 610.0000000 degrees C equals 18.0000032 degree F. This is about the upper end of the temperature range in the Sun's corona. 7 Hermes Trismegistus, Chapter 112 Dina. 8 OSHA.N.U.S, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/OSHA.N.U.S. The T.I.10 of the river Okeanos. 9 Acellus Borealis. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/gamma_cancri. 10.0000000 degrees C equals 18.0000032 degree F. So, above, the author said Serpa.S. said this temperature. Now the author note says maximum. But yeah, keep in mind, we are translating a web novel and not the published light novel. So it's technically just a draft version. 11 Zeton, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Zeton, olded equals 4841089959. 12 As a reference, the total Ma.S.S of the Earth's hydrosphere is approximately 1.4 quintillion tons, 1.4 *1018. 100 billions are in the 1011s range. Although, if you can understand what I'm saying, you probably don't need me to tell you that XD. And if you can't understand what I'm saying, this note wouldn't help you either way. XD. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/hydrosphere. 13 If you recall, Hydras is a pure physical CLA.S. Thus, he has a low intelligence, int, stat, meaning the skill's damage doesn't scale too well with him. 14 According to the wiki, Gyarados has a 125 base attack stat but only a 60 base special attack stat. Hydro Pump is a very strong skill, 110 base power, but it scales off the special attack stat. Although Aqua Tail, 90 base power, and Waterfall, 80 base power, are not as strong as Hydro Pump, they scale off the attack stat. So by simplifying the math, although there's other factors, Hydro Pump, 110 base power x 60 special attack stat equals 6600 damage. Aqua Tail, 90 base power x 125 attack stat equals 11250 damage. Waterfall, 80 base power x 125 attack stat equals 10000 damage. So even though Hydro Pump does more damage as a skill, if a normal Gyarados, without doping, is the one using it, then Aqua Tail and Waterfall will do more damage. It's a similar deal with Hydrus. Gyarados, Hydro Pump, Aqua Tail and Waterfall are all from Pokemon. Gyarados, Hydro Pump, Aqua Tail, Waterfall.